rainfall and the significant flooding. And as you guys expressed, we do have the Florida Turnpike closed in Orange County. Traffic is being diverted southbound at the 265, which is the 408, to help with traffic to be able to get off the turnpike. And again, northbound, it is closed at mile marker 254. And in addition to that, the Central Florida plazas are also remained closed.
All right. So Tara, tell us what you are seeing out there right now and what your folks are seeing right there out now.
So right now we're experiencing some flooded roads, and our troopers are out there to try to help with clearing the roadway. And that's why we want to express the importance that everyone should stay off the roads. Do not go outside until the storm has passed, until it's been deemed safe. Never walk even on flooded water just because you don't know what's underneath there. Even 6 inches of water can cause your car to stall, but it can even knock you off your feet. And a foot of water can float many vehicles, and 2 feet of water can even cause SUVs and trucks to carry away.
Lieutenant, we're hearing that all the roads around Orlando International Airport are also shut down right now. Are you guys able to get around the airport? We understand that there are no operations today. We know they shut down yesterday, but just the areas around the airport.
So there's many flooded streets here in Orange County, and we've been working with our DOT partners, our road rangers, and of course the sheriff's office.
You've been listening to coverage from our partners at Fox 35 in Orlando. They are covering the significant flooding that's been happening overnight through early this morning. In fact, within a 6-hour window, many spots in Central Florida have received 7 to even 10 inches of rain, and that's why they're dealing with a flash flood emergency. That flash flood emergency is still in effect for the next 2 hours. So please stay off the road. A couple hot spots, the northern suburbs of Orlando, also down to the south of Orlando in Kissimmee. We're seeing high water rescues take place in both of those locations. Now, the most intense rain has lifted north of some of these hard hit areas. Look at all the boxes flashing from Orlando through Winter Springs, Deltona up towards Daytona Beach. It's that Interstate 4 corridor that was just hammered all the way through the early morning hours. Now the intense rain is shifting slightly to the north. This is a crawling system. I mean, Ian, which is still a tropical storm, is only moving to the northeast at about 8 miles per hour. So it's taken a lot of time to get to this spot where our rain rate along Interstate 4 has dropped down to about a ½ inch to an inch of rain per hour. The flooding potential is still there. I want you to take caution, but at least we're seeing an encouraging trend take place on radar. Now, unfortunately, that does mean other people are now at threat. So if you live in Ormond Beach up towards Flagler Beach, you guys went under a flash flood warning about 45 minutes ago. That's where conditions are about to go downhill. Look at the red that is offshore. That's a rain rate of about 3 to 4 inches of rain per hour. It is still offshore, but it is going to rotate in between Ormond Beach and Flagler Beach, and that is going to create a tremendous flooding concern. That band will continue to move inland, and it's most likely going to be south of Pearson, so please take some extra caution in these areas. Know what is on the way. We also have extreme wind gusts. That's really something that's located along the Atlantic coast. We've had wind gusts in excess of 98 miles per hour in Daytona Beach, and that wind gust was just about 2 hours ago. Estimating with radar, the last 6 hours, a lot of spots along 95 between Daytona Beach and Edgewater coming in around 8 to 9 inches. This is estimated by radar, but just judging off the observation, everything comes into line that those rain totals this morning are going to be somewhere between 7 and about 10 inches of rain. And then as we look at the storm total, there's many spots across the area, especially 95 south of Daytona Beach heading into Titusville, where we have 18 to 24 inches of rain. So this entire duration of Ian has been a big deal for Central Florida, but specifically the last 3 to 5 hours has been crucial. And that's why we're dealing with the flash flood emergency. We're also looking at some of our camera shots. They do drop from time to time. Keep in mind, especially our coastal locations, we have wind gusts coming in between 80 and 90 miles per hour. So that is impacting the connectivity of getting some of these camera shots. But Jason, when they do come into focus, we'll make sure that we pop them up because it is tremendous. We're talking about palm trees that are bending all the way over and visibility dropping almost to nil. Jason, we are looking at the Horse Creek. That is above record stage. It is just one of the many rivers that is flooding across Central Florida this morning.
Yeah, so we will continue to monitor what's happening with this water, and this is going to slowly continue to go up in terms of the rain bands. Live look over in St. Augustine, and you can see right there, first responders there, it looks like they are blocking the roadway there. No surprise there, because as the winds are slowly starting to increase, we are slowly going to start to see area roadways in and around the Jacksonville area and south of there that are going to be closed here. So let's talk about what's going to happen next for those of you that are in the path of Ian. And it's important to note here that even though Ian right now is a tropical storm, there are some indications that Ian could potentially go out to sea and then further strengthen. We do have tropical storm warnings in effect for those of you not only in South Georgia, but also South Carolina, all the way up to Myrtle Beach, Charleston, included in that tropical storm warning. And as you move farther inland, places like Augusta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, as well as Florence, are under a tropical storm watch. Now, the reason why those of you in places like Brunswick, as well as Savannah, Hilton Head, extending up to Charleston, are under the hurricane watch is because there is a chance that as Ian moves out into the Atlantic Ocean, that we could see some strengthening. So over, we'll say, the next 24 hours, we do anticipate that Ian will move back into the Atlantic, and then it will start to lose its strength a little bit. We're expecting only max winds to be at about 65 miles per hour. But because that water in the Atlantic is still in the 80-degree and higher range, that is why the winds are slowly going to start picking up. Now, we do anticipate a secondary landfall here for the United States here sometime, or I should say somewhere between Savannah as well as Charleston. Right now, you're taking a live look right now over at Centerville, Florida. This is a house fire right now, and it's unclear whether or not anyone is in that house fire there. But we do also have some water there on the road as well. You know, as daylight is slowly returning here to Centerville, Florida, this is what we are going to see. And you just look at the devastation that was left behind. I mean, we got anywhere from about 12 to upwards of 18 inches of rain across some parts of Florida there. And you can see some of those vehicles trying to make their way through some of the flooded roadways here. And we are just hoping that the fire department is going to be able to respond to that house fire. It's unclear whether or not anyone is inside that house fire, but it does appear that we do have a few SUVs there on the roadway. And if you also look there towards the bottom of your screen there, you can even see some boats because of the power of the wind as well as some of that rain there. You can see some of the boats there have been displaced there. And it appears as though this helicopter's just flying around there, just taking a look at some of the damage that was left behind by what was Hurricane Ian. Right now it is still a tropical storm Ian. And as the camera there zooms in, that's exactly what we were just talking about seeing just the strength there of some of the winds there. And it knocked down also some of the boats there off their
the docks. Yeah. I mean, you can tell what most people did ahead of this hurricane was they tethered up their boats, right? But I mean, there's only so much you can do, not only with the power of water, but also the power of wind. Something that was notable, Jason, when the helicopter was closer to the house fire that they're monitoring in Sanibel, Florida, was that we have a lot of damage to the siding. We saw a lot of that ripped away from the homes. We also saw a tremendous amount of tree damage. Look at the docks here. I mean, you're talking about part of it submerged. All you can see is really the wood pilings. So part of those docks just completely stripped away from the wood pilings themselves. You can tell that we do have some structural damage to some of these buildings. You're talking about the siding of some of these buildings completely ripped apart, of course, because of those strong winds from Hurricane Ian as it blew through the area.
DeSantis had said that he does have 100 engineers that are working in teams of 2 to inspect all of these bridges, because, you know, you got to remember that whenever you have hurricane force winds, you know, these bridges, I mean, they're man-made. They're not meant to withstand 100 or 150 mile per hour winds here. So as we take a look at the infrastructure that is in place over in Sanibel, this is going to be extensive in terms of some of the damage there. And it even looks like, you know, Britta, as the camera there zooms in, it looks like even some of these trees there were blown onto some of the area streets there as well.
Yeah, and just look at how much water's still left behind. So, I mean, this is an area that the current weather conditions have improved, and you can tell that we have a couple cars that are driving on the roads. But as they pass through, you can see a wake behind them. So it is always impressive and always takes my breath away how long it takes for water to really recede after you've been through a storm like this. I did want to touch on our storm surge impacts for today, because we're not done with Ian by any means. We're tracking the flooding concerns in Central Florida. That is because of what's falling from the sky. We still have surge impacts, which are going to create some surge flooding. This is a representation of surge flooding, what we saw in Naples and also in Sanibel. Now, the storm surge that we're anticipating for Northeast Florida, also moving up into South Carolina, not as dire as what we saw yesterday, because of course this is a weaker system at this point. Right now it's a tropical storm, but we're starting to see that onshore push on the Atlantic side, and that is causing an increase with storm surge. So right now, our current markers are showing that in South Bank Riverwalk, along the South Bank Riverwalk in Jacksonville, we have just under a foot. So as we work our way through the day, and especially during times of high tide, you want to make sure that you're taking a lot extra caution, especially along the St. John River. We're going to see this push of all the water in the Atlantic being driven in by that northeast wind that's coming in around Tropical Storm Ian. So we are going to see some surge impacts here, and we do have active storm surge warnings in effect. Here's a look at some buoy cameras. This buoy in particular out in the open Atlantic. Look at the wave heights here. So these are screen grabs throughout time. You can tell how tumultuous the water is, especially on this one right here. Look at that, how it almost looks like the horizon is at a diagonal. That's not the horizon. That's the wave that's moving over this buoy. So it really shows you that power of the ocean. Storm surge warnings are still in effect, by the way, for Southwest Florida. Today's real big focus for storm surge, for active storm surge, is going to be from the Palm Coast all the way through Charleston, South Carolina. We do have a storm surge watch in effect for Myrtle Beach. You want to make sure that you watch that, because it could go into warning as we get closer to having impacts from Tropical Storm Ian. Now, the core of this system is going to go back over the open Atlantic. That could allow this to strengthen. It's not out of the question that we could have Ian turn back into a hurricane, and we are expecting a second U.S. landfall from Ian during the day tomorrow. Stay with us here on Fox Weather as we continue to track Ian.
Oh my gosh, you look great. Thanks to you, I lost 22 pounds. And I lost 40 pounds by signing up with Jenny Craig.
Max Up is Jenny's most effective program ever.
I struggled to lose my baby weight, and my confidence was at an all-time low. Jenny helped me turn everything around. With her delicious food and personal coaching, the weight came right off. Now I'm looking and feeling like myself again. What are you waiting for? Sign up now. Jenny works.
Find the perfect gift at berries.com.
When hope is hard to find, a new collection of real-life stories from Fox News' Harris Faulkner reveals how salvation came when it was needed most. Faith still moves mountains. Miraculous stories of the healing power of prayer. Go to foxnewsbooks.com to pre-order now. America spends Sunday nights with Trey Gowdy. He's talking the biggest issues facing the nation.
It's one thing to see the problem. It's even better if you see a solution.
And defending your freedom with the facts. Don't miss Sunday Night America with Trey Gowdy at 7, only on Fox News Channel.
The Talk, which is now taking a hiatus.
Sharon Osbourne was fired from The Talk. The Talk made headlines around the world.
It was unfathomable that that happened on The Talk.
I just kept saying, why are you all doing this to me? Cheryl was stabbing me in the back.
The punishment doesn't fit the crime because there was no crime.
I say when I'm done, not them.
Welcome back to Fox Weather Live. Look this morning over in the Jacksonville area. This is over at Jacksonville International Airport where all flights have been canceled. And this is due to the fact that the airport has been closed here for today here. And this is all because of Ian and what's going to be happening here. And I got to be honest with you, you don't want to be traveling during this because it is going to be very bumpy here. We're also seeing some flights into and out of the Miami area right now. So that is, of course, a good thing. But we still are seeing some flight operations suspended over at MCO, which is over in the Orlando area. So as Ian slowly is going to be trekking up slowly across the Atlantic coastline, I'm anticipating that we will see places like the Savannah International Airport as well as the Charleston International Airport. They will likely either see some significant delays here over the next 24 hours, or we could see some flights temporarily suspended here. So at West Palm Beach right now, we're seeing about 15 flights that have been delayed. 8 have been canceled. And over in Orlando right now, 828 flights have been canceled. Over in Tampa, 378 flights have been canceled. And over in Miami right now, we're seeing some flights, the delays. About 48 flights have been delayed and about 68 have been canceled here. So across Florida, we are going to see some significant weather delays here. So, Britta, if you do have a chance to go to Florida, if you don't need to go to Florida right now, we would highly recommend that maybe just push this back by another day or two and let Ian move on.
This is going to have a rippling effect across other airports across the U.S. So if you're traveling today at large, you definitely want to make sure that you know what is going on. Let's take a look at the impacts that we are concerned about with Ian, because it continues to be a very strong storm. Right now, it is a tropical storm, but it's producing significant flooding across central Florida. That is a live look at Orlando. That is Lake Eola off to your right, which was out of its banks. We had some street flooding across, the downtown area by the lake because of the rain that we've picked up. I mean, overnight, we easily stacked up 7 to 10 inches of rain for many of you in Central Florida. The closer you get to the coast, the more you have that combination of the rain and the wind. I mean, this camera in Orlando is moving, but that's an elevated camera. As we look at the cameras closer to the beach, I mean, it looks like a hurricane's moving through. And in fact, those wind gusts have been hurricane strength. Daytona Beach had a wind gust of 99 miles per hour this morning. Right now, you can tell that we're not really registering a lot on the wind. That's likely just some malfunctioning with the instrument itself, because once you start getting these strong wind gusts of 97, 99, sometimes you do have some issues that pop up. Look at the visibility here. You can't even make out where the beach is, but it is an onshore wind. So just judging off the palm trees, the Atlantic Ocean has to be somewhere over here to the left. And we are going to continue to see these strong rain bands just wrap in around Ian. And underneath those rain bands, you can easily pick up, 3 to 4 inches of rain per hour. As we take a look at the rain totals, and this is for the entire storm, for all of Ian and the impact in Central Florida, going out to the coastline itself in Central Florida, these little areas of pink and purple, that's 18 to 24 inches right along the 95 corridor. That's 2 feet of rain. I mean, that's an impressive total. Now, as you take Interstate 4 from Daytona Beach and drop into Orlando, those storm totals are coming in above a foot, and we do have active flash flood warnings and a flash flood emergency in effect. That flash flood emergency is going to stay up until 11:45 local time, and thankfully, the active radar looks better for Orlando. We still have the rain coming down, but it's at a light clip. It's not that heavy rain anymore. It is still very heavy, though, up towards Daytona Beach, extending into Ormond Beach and Flagler Beach. That's where we do have rain rates of 1 inch to 2 inches of rain per hour. So exercise some extra caution along the beachfront. Not only do you have heavy rain, but you have the wind component as well. Looking at the rain rate right now along the 95 corridors, specifically getting to the coastline itself, we still do have a few pockets. I mean, right now, Ormond Beach estimating with radar a rain rate of 2 to 3 inches of rain per hour. So, Jason, we're not out of the thick of it. Now, this storm is moving out to sea. So by lunchtime and through the afternoon, weather conditions will be improving for Florida, but we are still going to see a surge impact. And Steve, the storm surge in Jacksonville is going to be a concern even through the afternoon and this evening.
Yeah, we're going to see that high tide coming in the coming hours. We heard from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis earlier. Let's take a listen in on some of the key things he had to say.
So as soon as that storm passed in the very wee hours of the morning, first responders from the local, state, and federal level descended on Southwest Florida. The impacts of this storm are historic, and the damage that was done has been historic. And this is just off initial assessments. We've never seen a flood event like this. We've never seen storm surge of this magnitude, and it hit an area where there's a lot of people in a lot of those low-lying areas, and it's going to end up doing extensive damage.
And we're showing you Tropical Storm Ian as of right now, but the impacts that was felt when it was a strong Cat 4 pushing along the southwest coast of Florida. There's Naples. That inundation from the storm surge, that was a major problem that we saw widespread. And so we're going to be looking at the recovery efforts there and still the search and rescue efforts as the sun comes up and those rescue crews from all around the state and the southeast come in to help out. So you're looking at Tropical Storm Ian on water vapor, still plenty of energy left in this system. Tropical rain now coming down from Orlando along I-4 towards Daytona Beach. And what we want to show real quickly is visible satellite of Ian, because I think this was important to note. Notice as this made landfall, right ahead of that, there was that clearing that we had of the eye showing you that strengthening. We had talked about rapid intensification on our show yesterday. That was really gaining energy as it pushed through. And so when we saw this inevitably make landfall later into the afternoon, it was still a strong Cat 4, 150-mile-per-hour winds sustained. And when we look back on this in the history books, we'll be looking at this as a top 4 storm for Florida.
But, you know, Steve, there is some indication here that Ian could have a potential secondary landfall to the United States over somewhere between the Savannah as well as the Charleston, South Carolina area. So this is going to be a continued historic storm. And as you take a look right now of some of the damage that was left behind by Ian, this is over in the Fort Myers area.
Yeah, the amount of surge that came through this area was tremendous. I mean, that video right there from Tampa showing one of those large stoplights completely dropping down from the wire itself. So we registered wind gusts in excess of 125 miles per hour, storm surge that's reaching above 9 to 10 feet. There's a reason why this is going down in the record books. And it's just heartbreaking, as really this morning's the first time that most folks in Southwest Florida are really starting to visually see the scope of the damage left behind. And then, Jason, you bring up the fact that we're not done with it. We've had a flash flood emergency in Central Florida this morning. We have surge impacts for Northeast Florida for this afternoon and this evening, and then a possible second landfall anticipated for tomorrow.
Yeah, so Amy Freaks and Craig Herrera are getting ready right now. They are going to be picking up our coverage at the top of the hour. We'll have much more on Ian coming up after this.
Oh my gosh, you look great. Thanks to you, I lost 22 pounds. And I lost 40 pounds by signing up with Jenny Craig.
Max Up is Jenny's most effective program ever.
I struggled to lose my baby weight and my confidence was at an all-time low. Jenny helped me turn everything around. With her delicious food and personal coaching, the weight came right off. Now I'm looking and feeling like myself again. What are you waiting for? Sign up now. Jenny works.
America is waking up to Fox and Friends.
Hey, guys.
Morning, Sam. Watch out. Rain's in the forecast.
It's important to have friends you trust. Fox and Friends, America's best friends.
The Talk, which is now taking a hiatus.
Sharon Osbourne was fired from The Talk, and The Talk made headlines around the world.
It was unfathomable that that happened on The Talk.
I just kept saying, why are you all doing this to me? Cheryl was stabbing me in the back.
The punishment doesn't fit the crime because there was no crime.
I say when I'm done. Not them.
Tracking Hurricane Ian.
Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this.
As Florida braces for impact, Hurricane HQ has you covered.
We're looking at the potential of a major hurricane.
For up-to-the-minute reports, stay with Fox Weather.
This September, fall into Tubi.
I'm excited.
With your favorite stars.
Why do this? Why not do it?
The biggest movies.
Let's play some basketball.
And the greatest moments. Settle in and stream. Watch free.
Ian, now a tropical storm after making landfall in southwestern Florida on Wednesday as one of the strongest hurricanes to ever hit the United States.
The powerful Category 4 hurricane unleashed winds of 150 miles per hour. The storm continues to bring damaging winds, life-threatening storm surge, widespread flooding as it crawls northeast and threatens South Carolina as a possible second U.S. landfall. Welcome to Fox Weather. I'm Craig Herrera.
And I'm Amy Freeze. We continue our coverage here on Fox Weather with Tropical Storm Ian. And this has had wide-reaching impacts across the state of Florida. And the wrath of Ian not done yet. In fact, we're looking at the power outages across the area and now expanding to 5 million customers. A reminder that a customer is one household. So you really can multiply that because oftentimes more than one person lives in a house that is a customer.
Got a family of 4.
Yeah, we're looking at millions of people in Florida without access to any power right now. And of course, there are crews that are waiting to start that up, but they cannot begin until the winds have subsided to at least 30, 35 miles per hour.
Right. And when they're in a little more of a situation where they can get to some of these power lines and power poles, remember, a lot of these places are still flooded out. And if the lines are still alive, you've got to be careful with that as well. So they've got a lot to track before they can actually go in as well.
We do understand that crews have come in from outside the state of Florida. They've been on standby waiting to make sure that the roads are clear. Keep in mind that, of course, there are so many bridges and overpasses and structures that have to be cleared by engineers in order for those crews to get into the very vulnerable places. So you don't want crews going into roads that have been washed away in some cases.
That's a good point, Amy, because a lot of these may be standing, but structurally they look okay. But structurally, there might be something below that we don't see that could have caused some of these bridges to not be safe to pass over. So
anyone who's been down to Florida, getting over the causeways, making your way even inland in places like Orlando, you're looking at about 100 lakes. So there's various bodies of water that you're navigating over. We know that Governor DeSantis has said that they will wait until everything is clear and safe for these crews to go in. First responders have already been risking their lives in these conditions. He also noted that they do have plenty of supplies on hand. 300 truckloads of food and water have been mobilized to Southwest Florida.
Yeah, and they've also earlier, just about an hour ago, 9 a.m., he had a presser out there. Governor DeSantis also mentioned that U.S. Coast Guard had started rescue missions. They have about 100 portable cell phone towers that are being deployed to the area because, as you can imagine, all those cell phones the towers have been knocked off. Lee and Charlotte counties, he said, are major impact zones, and 9 counties have major disaster declarations. He did say that they expect that number to change as well. They've also responded to 1,300 requests for emergency. 1,500 requests are still out there. That one coming from the Florida Disaster of Emergency Management Director Kevin Guthrie. That was also mentioned about an hour ago.
You know, earlier this morning, it came out with Lee County Sheriff's Office that there were deaths associated with Hurricane Ian. They're still trying to navigate that. But I think one of the messages that the Sheriff's Office was really trying to convey is that there were hundreds of life-threatening calls, life-threatening emergencies that happened during that time period that they were not able to respond to. And then they're going to have to go in and look. We do know that there were some deaths related to flooding there in the Sanibel area, but we have to wait for confirmation on some of those things. No question, though, beyond life-threatening, this is a storm that has forever changed the western coastline there of Florida.
It's one storm that we will study and learn from as we move forward. You mentioned Orlando. We've got 2 live shots for you, Jacksonville and Orlando on the left side of your screen. Look at the images that came in from Naples earlier. Storm surge there was well over 6 feet, breaking the old record of 4.25. They experienced that storm surge back in 2017 with Hurricane Irma. Orlando and Jacksonville getting so much rain as the storm is slowly moving to the north, and a lot of the theme parks closed again today, from the Disney World theme parks to Universal theme parks. The hotels at Universal were completely booked as of yesterday, and they were asking their guests and customers there to stay hunkered down as the storm passed overhead. They even opened up some of the parking garages in Orlando for people to go up to higher ground. But some places or some people maybe didn't heed that warning. A lot of people did stay behind. which has been tough to see.
What hits me hard looking at the screen right now, Craig, quite frankly, is that we're talking about the span of hundreds of miles from Fort Myers, near where Hurricane Ian made landfall, to now where the tropical storm Ian is inundating Orlando with flooding waters. And we're looking at rivers set to make crest at major flood stage, and then Jacksonville facing now a surge, not just at the ocean front, but also for St. Johns River.
Yeah, absolutely. High
Hundreds
tides.
of miles between these cities.
Right. And so when you mentioned the hundreds of lakes around, in and around Orlando, 100 or so, a lot of these communities are built around these lakes. A lot of people live here and they go there specifically for the lakes, for the recreation. These communities likely to see plenty of flooding. Check out the coverage we've got for you across this path of Hurricane Ian. 16 reporters spread across Florida and Georgia, bringing you the very latest. We want to bring you the very latest as well.
And the crews have been out there enduring these conditions in all kinds of elements, not just the wind, rain, and surge, but also lack of access to electricity and also lack of access to some of the cell towers that you so desperately need for communication. So the crews out there really doing a wonderful job and accessing technology the best they can in these elements.
And doing the best they can, bringing you the latest information as we get it as well, bringing you the stories and the pictures. Let's get going with what we have right now. A live shot right now, St. Augustine, Florida. Look at the storm surge just crashing up against the beaches there. We're going to see widespread beach erosion up and down both coasts of Florida there. As you look on the bottom side of your screen on the left side, you can see the radar where Ian is right now. A lot of the wraparound moisture getting pushed over the Atlantic, and a lot of that's going to slide up toward Georgia and the Carolinas. And having said that, it's going to bring some strong winds, tropical force winds. You remember those are 39 to 73 miles per hour that will push a lot of that water back onto the coast as well, especially during high tide in some cases. Meantime, we do have these tropical storm watches and warnings. Again, the tropical storm watches for 39 to 73 mile per hour winds. The hurricane warnings for 74 mile per hour winds or stronger. Yesterday, you recall, if you were with us, we were seeing wind gusts 100 to 112 miles per hour over on the west coast of Florida. There's another live shot for you from one of our weather stem cameras right below me, where you can see the just almost visibility just completely gone in some cases. We're also seeing the threat for the chance for some tornadoes, and a lot of these could be rain wrapped, and they happen quickly as this storm is moving through quickly. The radar now shows the storm crawling up to the north, the heaviest rain on the north side of that. We continue with that flash flood likely. We have also heard of flash flood emergencies in and around the Orlando area. Those flash flood emergencies are rather rare. You only get those when they're talking about life-threatening flooding that's occurring and they're doing some rescue missions going on. You see the flash flood emergency we've highlighted there, several areas in several counties there. Maybe the rain isn't coming down quite as heavy at this moment. It's pretty consistent and moderate, but it is picking up on the north side of that. Plus, many of these locations have already received plenty of rain. When you look at the estimated rainfall for the past 3 hours or so, shades of red, you're looking at 3 to 5 inches of rain easily, especially along the coast south of Daytona Beach, all the way to Orlando. Shades of yellow right along the coast there, 2 to 3 inches of rain has been very impressive. We zoom on in here a bit to give you a better perspective. Deltona and Oak Hill have been experiencing some heavy rain. Titusville up to the north, we highlight that shade of red where you see 12 to 18 of inches possible over the past 24 hours. Those are radar estimates, easily a foot, basically. But not just there, in and around those bright reds, you see some 5 to 8 inch ranges all the way out, and those bands are pretty tight. So a wide path of real estate here experiencing all of the heavy rain. Storm reports coming in over the past 3 hours. You can see there on the map, we've marked them out. A lot of flooding reports coming in as well. We'll zoom on in to take a look at a couple of them. Photo of a twister on water in home there, and on Twitter rather. Photo on Twitter of water in home up to 1 to 2 feet in depth. That from Christine there, and that's in Central Florida. Also, Lake Mary experiencing some water reports here. Water rescues in progress on State Road 46. That's on the ramp to I-4, where approximately 5 feet of water is sitting on the ramp. 5 feet of water sitting on the ramp. You think of some adults are right about 5 feet or just a little bit taller than that. Daytona Beach Airport also indicating some wind gusts, and some of those wind gusts to the north have been impressive. 71-mile-per-hour wind gusts. That is just impressive. And of course, the airports have had to deal with that as well. In Marineland as well, one of the Mesonet stations out there in Flagler County, see some of the wind gusts at 71 miles per hour. Just incredible. You're just a few miles per hour shy of hurricane force gusts there. Rain still to come for the next 5 days, especially look at Daytona Beach to St. Augustine. The areas we just showed you that have already received a foot of rain, likely to see another foot of rain, at least 5 to 8 inches of rain, up to 12 inches of rain coming in the next 5 days. So this is just going to cause major problems. The flooding a concern all the way up. Flood alerts posted through Saturday morning, all the way to Charleston, head all the way down into the central coast of Florida as well. Jacksonville included with this, Brunswick, Savannah. You think of places along the coast, there are a lot of the islands, Jekyll Island, Georgia, all of these islands are going to experience a whole lot of storm surge as well as winds. Make sure that if you are in Georgia or the Carolinas, today is your day to prep. Make sure that you have everything ready to go. That does mean everything is charged, your food, your water. And Amy, an important note, always get cash with you if you can, because once you lose power, you don't have access to ATMs. You may need money to get some supplies later on once things happen. Meantime, we continue to track this as it moves slowly to the north and northeast.
We talked about our Reporter 16 covering Ian all across the southeast from Florida into Georgia. Right now, Fox Weather's Robert Ray in Fort Myers. Robert, historical storm surge there in Fort Myers, going down the history books, really just smashing the record, going above 7 feet. Talk about what's happening there.
Yeah, Amy, look at this. This shows you what the storm surge has done. It's pushed vessels on top of each other on their sides in a collision course. These are large, some of these like toys, now just ripped apart by the storm surge and the hurricane force winds, and all the debris here, just remarkable in this here area. Look at this. These are the docks, concrete docks split in half and pushed by all of the energy here. Just a ridiculous amount of destruction. Unfortunately, millions of dollars of destruction just where I'm standing right now on this dock. And Fort Myers downtown is just over here to my left, and that is where the streets were flooded last night as the hurricane force winds came in, just wreaking havoc. Debris, Amy, was flying everywhere, trees, roofs, and it was tough to even get out of here for my photographer and I. And I want to give you sort of a firsthand account from a resident who lives in a high rise above here that hunkered down and went through this. He's standing over there. I'm going to head over here. Bob Benham. 1 second, Bob. I'll be over there in a second to you here. Sir, tell us, what did you go through last night? What did you experience? And as a former retired airline pilot, you know a little thing about weather.
Yeah, it was the strongest weather I've ever seen, and I've been to most of the continents of the world. Until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the wind was coming off from the east, so it was coming from the shore out into the lake. But after 3 o'clock, it reversed, and that's when the damage started here at Legacy. The docks started weaving like this, and then they started separating, and boats were tied to the docks. They didn't separate from the docks, and then they all started just piling up like Tinker Toys. It was pretty amazing. And we got up this morning, there was no docks left. There's none left.
What was it like when you were up in the high rise with the hurricane force winds last evening? And do you think that they were the strongest around 6:30?
Yeah, between 6 and 8, I would say they were about the strongest, and the water got about the highest. We have storm shutters up there that are rated for Cat 5, and they were vibrating maybe 2 or 3 inches, but they never gave way, and none of our windows gave way. We have, in our complex over here at the High Point Place, we have no damage other than the surge went into the first floor garage and left about 2 inches of mud and soaked some of the cars on the first floor garage. None of the apartments that I know of were ever damaged. None. Other than that, we have just landscape damage.
Do you know anybody on the shores that hunkered down and stayed by any chance? Because I know search and rescue is happening right now.
No, I don't know anybody on the shore. No.
Okay.
We just came back from checking on our relatives live down in McGregor, further to the south. They evacuated, and their houses are safe. They can get any water in their houses. So
Good to know. Bob, thanks for being on Fox Weather. I'm glad you're okay. And
Yeah.
thank you for talking to us, sharing your insight.
No problem.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Yeah, so Amy, there you go. A firsthand account of someone that went through this. That high rise is, 30 stories?
33 stories, the highest one in town.
33 stories, the highest in Fort Myers, a fortress, no doubt. But you heard Bob say it's the toughest weather conditions he's ever seen, and he's been on all the continents as a former airline pilot.
It was a powerful storm, no question about it when you look at the statistics, but it's quite another to have an eyewitness account. Robert, something interesting, too, he talks about being in a high rise. It's important to note that as you increase in height, going up in a high rise like that, the wind also increases with height. And sometimes you can see as much as a 10-mile-per-hour increase each story that you go up. So I can only imagine the howling and, of course, definitely the sturdiness of the structure there. Are there many high rises there in Fort Myers that are above 10 stories?
Yeah, on the shore there are. On the shore there's definitely. In Fort Myers, across the bay where I'm at, there are definitely high rises. I'm looking right now, actually. Just follow me. I want to get a better view over here. I am seeing high rises that are probably 20 or so stories. And then I know also, Amy, down in Naples, the high rises are significant down there on the Gulf of Mexico. And actually, I went through Hurricane Irma back in 2017 in one of those high rises. And I remember, to your point, exactly up there, the sounds and the howling and those storm shutters on the lanais, just boom, 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 back and forth, just tremendous. But you look at this and you realize this is just one tiny example of this destruction. And we just hope that those search and rescue crews out there today find people that are in okay shape, certainly shooken up, and they can get to them to safe ground. And those numbers that were said by the official earlier don't come to fruition. And we heard Governor DeSantis say that, potentially that's not the case with those numbers, that they did take, thousands of calls, emergency calls of people that were trapped, but that doesn't mean that those were casualties.
Right.
Amy.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Also, as you've broadened out the picture here, we can kind of get the scope really well. And I can see the bridge in the background. There's at least traffic going over that particular passway. So people are at least out and about moving. I see some vehicles making their way along that roadway. But man, look at just the destruction across this entire yacht area or port, whatever this is here, a pier. Tossed around like toys.
It is. You look over here, and by the way, so, in all of this, you see vegetation, trees that got pushed in. But look, what I'm shocked at too is these big concrete piers that are just mangled and blocked off, and just thankfully, look at this Crab Shack restaurant. That the boats didn't actually make their way into this restaurant. I can't imagine if some of these giant vessels did that. And I'm not sure that we have a view over here because of all the poles. But I look over to my left. There's a huge vessel that's standing on top of another vessel with another one that's on its side and splintered and part of the dock inside of it. So just remarkable images.
It just is incredible to see it. Finally, if you were to compare, Robert, the experience of the eye wall there in Fort Myers while you were going through Ian, it just seems like the duration of the eye wall was so long, several hours of these sustained conditions. Would you say it's comparative to other storms? The size and strength of Ian, it seems like that eye wall lasted longer.
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night as we left this area and zigzagged through the roads full of debris, and then went to our hotel that was no power, no water. And I was thinking about this last night, and it's tough to compare. I'll be honest with you. I think this is one of the most tenacious storms I've ever covered as it came in. Hurricane Laura in 2020 that came into Lake Charles. Look, it was bad, and it put a whooping on that area. But I don't recall it being as long and as forceful. every single time Rick and I, my photographer, thought, okay, we've got a lull here. Maybe this is sort of the end. It picked up and it kept going. And as Bob Benham just told us, and that's why I asked him if he thought between 6 and 6:30 or 8 o'clock was the toughest. He said it was. That's my experience last night too, as well. And I'll give you this example. And I can't say enough about Rick, the photographer. He had a 20-pound sandbag in his hand, Amy, and we were trying to get out of there to get out of harm's way from the surge. And he was walking with the 20-pound sandbag because that's what holds down his tripod. And a gust comes, and I am not exaggerating to you. I'm across the street. I watched him get lifted off the ground and thrown 5, 6, 7 feet and land on his shoulder. That is how strong these wind gusts last night were, to take a grown man with a 20-pound sandbag and lift him up. And that also tells you, whenever you see us standing out there like this and trying to hunker down in it, that's why we do it. I would say this is probably the most ferocious day yesterday covering a hurricane as far as when it comes in that I've ever experienced.
And, you make mention of the strength of the wind up against the average person. It scientifically, they show a 67 to 70 mile an hour wind is easily enough to knock someone completely off their feet. So that just speaks to the power of those winds. And even when you're trying to lean into it, you have the extra sandbag. I mean, these are very powerful elements that you're up against. We're going to talk a little more about the surge there, Robert, and show you how it stacks up. Of course, in Fort Myers, this was record storm surge by a lot. And we still have a little more to go. We are actually still under the storm surge warning from Fort Myers down to Naples. Right now, we're still looking at some of those numbers elevated 1 to 3 feet, but it's actually the other coast where we're going to be focusing on now, from Palm Coast all the way up to Charleston, where we will see additional storm surge. So now we know as the storm makes its way across Florida, it's going to create a circulation that throws the waves and the wind, pushing that water up against the shoreline. Again, about 1 to 3 feet here for Fort Myers. Again, damage has been done. So as far as that goes, be vigilant of the high waters. That's the message with that warning that comes. It's actually the opposite side of the coast here that we're really going to watch. From Daytona Beach southward down to Cocoa Beach, about 1 to 3 feet. Really from Palm Coast up to Jacksonville northward up into Georgia. We're going for 4 to 6. That is the ocean surge that we could see. This right here, the 3 to 5, that's the St. Johns River. So that's where we could see the additional flooding there. So a real concern as you start to look at the inundation that Ian is still capable of, right? We are not done with this storm, and the elements up against the shoreline are going to be significant. A lot of this has to do with the waves. So if we look at what's happening out in the buoys, this one from Daytona Beach showing us over 50 mile an hour winds, like 55, even 60 mile an hour winds with a current gust of 43. We are pushing that wave action with the wind up against the shoreline. Now, comparatively with some of the high tides, this is where we could really get into trouble. The high tides look like they're going to be coming in about midday and then again at midnight for the St. Joseph River. Another buoy that we're looking at, this is Cape Canaveral. It's about 20 nautical miles east-northeast of Cape Canaveral. And this buoy here will be reading high as well. As we get the data in, you'll see it start to fill in here. But man, these are going to be the places where we take the numbers and those gauges where we look for the data that will allow us to project what happens in places like Little Wekiva River. Little Wekiva River is in Seminole County. This is near the Altamonte Springs. Think about it. The Little Wekiva River is only about 18 miles long. It's not a big river, but it will definitely crest here. Looks like the latest stage was at 31. That takes it over the record. So it's coming back down on the backside here after hitting record stage. So I guess that actually is pretty good news here, that it's come down at least 2 feet from where it was at high tide there. And the amount of water that is coming in there also is influenced by the runoff that is happening. So you get rain falling from the sky, you get the wave action throwing the surge back against the shoreline, and of course that water being backed up to other smaller waterways. St. Johns River, this is into Lake Harney, Florida. Their crest is forecasted to happen just below the record stage at 11 feet, 11.09 feet is the record stage. Latest is at 9, but watch the curve that goes into the purple, which will come in the coming days. St. Johns River River a lot bigger than Little Waukewa. So the larger the body of water that it is, the longer it takes for that water to rise up and get to its crest or top flood stage. So already in a moderate stage, what this will do is some neighborhoods in around St. Johns River will flood out. There's hydrology statements of the National Weather Service where you can look into what areas will start to flood at what stage. It's very helpful. If you're near a river, you've not experienced flooding, or you're new to the area, you can go to the National Weather Service. Their hydrology will allow you to look at where major flood stage will put the water. How far does it come into your neighborhood? They will tell you historically down to parking lots and different geographical ranges that'll tell you exactly where that water is coming in. And it's very, very helpful, especially if you are new. One of the 500,000 new residents of the state of Florida here within the last year and a half. So a lot of people experiencing their first hurricane with Ian. Looking at the current wind speeds, Daytona Beach has been gusting up above 70 miles an hour since 9:30 this morning. So there has been a persistent onshore flow. That onshore flow are winds being turned into the coastline. As that happens, we get the water piling up. So that's the reason that we've got some of the surge numbers there, which is interesting because Daytona Beach is on the lower end of the surge threat. About 1 to 3 feet is what we're looking at. The further north we go up the coast, winds are a little less there, 45 for St. Augustine right now, but that's an area where we could see a little bit more. 4 to 6 is the storm surge forecast for that area. Wind doesn't just create problems with the water being thrown up against the shoreline. It's also power outages. Now 2.6 million Florida outages that we're looking at. Is this a recent number that we have right here? Is the 2.6? Hardy County, almost the entire county. DeSoto, almost the entire county. Charlotte County, still nearly without power. Lee and Highlands County, all above 85% without power. And these are customers. So if you have 5 people in your household, you can multiply that number well up from 2.6 million. So we've got a lot of people. Most of these power outages came as the storm came onshore. But as of 8 o'clock last night, we saw a big jump to at least 1 million more in the power outages, and they've not been able to come down. One thing that will prevent the crews from going out are the wind speeds. And the wind speeds need to come down by maybe 30, 35 miles an hour before the crews can get out there. They have to go up to a height to fix some of the power lines and to get into some of the grids. And so for that reason, you're going to see a delay until the storm subsides before people can get out and fix those power issues. So again, late tonight into tomorrow, for some people even to get the lights back on, and for everybody to have the power restored will take a considerable amount of time. Look at the severe storm threat. Don't want to go without talking about the possibility of tropical tornadoes, severe thunderstorms that can pop up all the way from Jacksonville Beach down the East Coast shoreline, I-95 taking you through Palm Coast, Daytona Beach down to New Smyrna, and the Storm Prediction Center putting you in a tornado threat zone. So being very vigilant on what this weather can do. Ian is not done yet. The wrath continues. But this storm will go down in history as one of the most powerful hurricanes to ever landfall in Florida. Right now, as we look at some of these threats going into the afternoon, I want to look at where the current state of this storm is. Right now, meteorologist Steve Bender is standing by. Steve, I want to send it over to you. One of the interesting things I heard you talking about this morning was just the amount of water that's already existing in inland areas like Orlando.
Yeah.
A lot of people may not realize how many lakes are there that are really at their tipping point because of all the water we've seen late summer.
Yeah, I lived here for 5 years, Amy, and went to college at UCF just down the road from here. And yeah, over 100 lakes. And at the lakes that we've seen, Lake Eola, I'm pointing at right now, white caps are forming. That shows you how fast the wind speed is at the surface. Let's dive into this camera since I know it. Lake Eola goes right into downtown. You got Robinson Road, which has been completely flooded for 3 hours now. You have Avante Living, a senior living center, which is just down the road to the east of here, being evacuated. We're going to bring you some visuals of that throughout our show, where it's so high up, they can't use wheelchairs to get them out. They had to take each individual person out by stretcher. That's what's showing you what's happening inland, not even around the coast. Let's take you to the coast, to the oldest city in America. That's St. Augustine. We're looking at the wind that's going to be driving in that storm surge. High tides coming in at 11 a.m. and will linger through the early afternoon. So you can see the angry waves off in the distance that will be crashing on shore. This is all still Tropical Storm Ian. Let's dive into what we're seeing in radar. There is the Melbourne site. That's what we're going to be using. Notice this horn. That is the Space Coast. Remember, they brought in the Artemis space shuttle in early this week because they had feared this is what's going to happen. Flagler County, they started their evacuations yesterday because of the rain that's coming in. Let's look at this on radar. You'll see all the green boxes. Those are flash flood warnings. Embedded in that is actually flash flood emergencies. And that's going to be the I-4 corridor from Altamont Springs up towards Deltona. And that is a grave situation. When they put an emergency tag, you're talking airboat rescues, jet ski rescues. Water is inundating homes, making it difficult to get to those people that are in need. And so this is going to go on until really noon. So you got another hour, an hour and a half under those emergencies. They have taken the brunt. Here's the good news, though. When we stop radar right now, notice most of it has lifted north of there. They are still getting those light showers, but most of this is pushing north along with the movement of the overall system that we have with Tropical Storm Ian. So over the past 12 hours, I-95 corridor, Daytona, down towards Oak Hill, they've got anywhere from a foot to a foot and a half of rain. That's what this dark patch is right into this region. Then you're seeing it widespread I-4 to the south from Deltona in those areas where they've had that flash flood emergency. They're looking at anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of rain, and that will kind of stretch back towards Titusville. But this has been widespread because some of that has actually gone down into Orlando and towards Kissimmee. And so we know that the theme parks, they're closed. We have the airports, they're closed too. We're looking at Jacksonville Airport. They're closed for today in anticipation of this moving north. As we look over the past 2 days, though, the brunt of this, of course, coming in there right around Port Charlotte, just to the north, where they took the northern eye wall. And those angry storms that had torrential rain, you're looking at anywhere from 1.5 feet to 2 feet of rain on top of the storm surge. And that's where we have all of our field teams. They're going to be diving in to that rescue effort and also the recovery efforts through the day. Here is a visible satellite. This is something that we can look at once the sun starts to rise. And so now we have a few hours where it's been up and we can look at the evolution of Tropical Storm Ian. And one thing is when it slows down, it's also going to broaden out. So this wind field is over 500 miles wide when you're talking about tropical storm force winds, and that's what's going to be driving in. Look at those little ripples in the upper atmosphere. That shows you the dynamic thunderstorms, outflowing winds counterclockwise are going to be pumping all of that storm surge into Jacksonville, the St. Johns River, which goes 310 miles down towards Orlando. And we're showing you that stream and why we're telling people in Georgia and the Carolinas, you need to be prepared for this for late tonight, Friday, and through the weekend. We'll talk to some local meteorologists that are there in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they're having their viewers reach out and say, hey, I was going to have a wedding at the beach. Is that going to be safe? No, you have a storm that's going to be moving back in and the possible third landfall that's going to be happening over the weekend here in the Carolinas and looking out towards Georgia as well. So when you look at visible satellite, all of this is attributed to Tropical Storm Ian. You can see that flow that continues to happen. And one thing to note, the water in the Atlantic right there in the southeast is very warm. We haven't had any major storms tap into that. We're looking at this way out here towards Bermuda was the only previous storm system that we had. And so we're looking at actually really warm water and energy to drive this in. And we also have a high pressure system sitting over the Ohio Valley region, which will guide this back in. And the problem is actually interior places like Asheville, Roanoke, Virginia. You're butting up against the Appalachian Mountains, the eastern slopes. This will also push into that. We've talked about the orographic lift in the past. You're looking at a flash flood threat where you could also be seeing nearly 8 to 12 inches of rain by the end of the weekend because all of these weather patterns are colliding right into this stretch right here from Virginia down through North Carolina and into northern Georgia. This will be an active weather pattern coming in into the next 48 to 96 hours. Craig?
All right, Steve, thanks so much. If you haven't seen this video yet, I want to show it to you from Sanibel Island. A house on fire there on the island. As you can see, the community just flooded out. Major concern here because last night, EMS and fire authority said they can't get to the island. It was just too dangerous. And then part of the causeway is now wiped out. So getting to the island is tough as well. Just sad to see these images that come in now that the storm has passed. We'll have more on Ian when we come back, including where it's going next, how much rain and wind to expect as it moves closer to South Carolina and Georgia. Right ahead on Fox Weather.
You're a CIO in 2022. So what's on the agenda? Threat briefings, IT meetings, and lots of coffee. With fully integrated security solutions all in one place. You're ready. Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
I guess my diet starts Monday.
No, girl, this is the diet. It's Jenny Craig and it's delicious.
You lost all that weight eating lasagna.
40 pounds in 6 months.
You look incredible.
I feel incredible. And thanks to my personal coach, I always have the support that I need.
Okay, well, sign me up.
Wait till you try the lava cake.
Lava cake?
Join for $18 and get 50% off your first week of food when you sign up now at jennycraig.com.
Tracking Hurricane Ian.
Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this.
As Florida braces for impact, Hurricane HQ has you covered.
We're looking at the potential of a major hurricane.
For up-to-the-minute reports, stay with Fox Weather.
It's really striking the amount of control that China already has. The Chinese government has spent billions of dollars buying Brazil's natural resources.
China will build ports, they'll build roads. They basically say, here's billions of dollars, and here's a few million for your family. We want to control your country.
If another country controls your natural resources, it's not really your country anymore.
And there won't be anything we can do about it.
Tucker Carlson Originals, The China Takeover, Brazil, streaming now on Fox Nation.
When hope is hard to find, a new collection of real-life stories from Fox News' Harris Faulkner reveals how salvation came when it was needed most. Faith still moves mountains. Miraculous stories of the healing power of prayer. Go to foxnewsbooks.com to pre-order now. America spends Sunday nights with Trey Gowdy. He's talking the biggest issues facing the nation.
It's one thing to see the problem. It's even better if you see a solution.
And defending your freedom with the facts. Don't miss Sunday Night America with Trey Gowdy at 7, only on Fox News.
Welcome back to Fox Weather as we're tracking Ian, taking a look at new video just into Fox Weather. A nursing home in Orlando is being evacuated due to the rising floodwaters. They have had record rainfall in Orlando, more than 7 inches for the daily record yesterday, and more than a month's rain here in the last 24 hours. This is the scene unfolding at Avante at Orlando. So this is a nursing home in Orange County. Fire and rescue are on the scene, and you can see the waters there ankle to knee deep as rescue workers, first responders try to make their way towards the entrance there. We don't know how many people are currently in this nursing home, but this just coming in to Fox Weather. Look at the rising floodwaters and, you know, just the most vulnerable here being at risk. As you can imagine, there's probably people that are living in this nursing home that need to be evacuated, that may have mobility issues, and really getting inside past the parking lot of where they are right now into what looks like a slightly lower entrance, quite frankly. As you look at the water, they may be walking downhill because you see the water getting a little bit deeper in this particular area. Orlando, by the way, yesterday had 3-inch per hour rainfall rates, just an incredible amount of rain. And the greater Orlando area, 10 to 15 inches of rainfall there. So this new video just coming in to Fox Weather.
Incredible. Also, we've been tracking this and going over team coverage. We've got teams fanned out all across Florida, as you can see on the map here. The coverage, we've been with you since the beginning, leading up to it. We'll stay with you throughout it. And after 16 reporters spread across Florida and Georgia, bringing you the very latest. We do want to bring in Fox Weather's Brandy Campbell, who is live in Kissimmee. Brandy, you've been out there all morning. Describe the conditions you're experiencing right now.
Well, right now we're just getting some gusts of wind. It's drizzling out here, not too heavy, but as you can see, the main issue right now is flooding. And because of this, it's not just happening in, commercial areas like you can see behind me, but residential areas. So this called for a lot of water rescues this morning. The fire department here in Kissimmee, Florida, they've done over 100. So about 127 people and 10 pets are in a high school for shelter, and 17 people actually sent to the hospital as part of these water rescues. You can actually see some of their vehicles going behind us. This is a airboat that they were using with the fire department to go ahead and rescue some of those folks in the communities not far from where I'm standing right now. I spoke to the fire chief, and he said he's never seen anything like this before in this area. I mean, the flooding is extensive, and they're searching to help people in areas that are close to water. So that'll be the creeks and rivers throughout this community. So they've been busy since about 5:30 this morning looking to help people after Hurricane Ian came through, and it obviously wasn't at Category 4 status, but it definitely made an impact on people's lives and property here. Guys.
All right, Brandy Campbell, thanks so much. And just the images coming in as we see daylight now. We'll check in with you in just a bit. Also want to mention the Osceola County Sheriff's Office says no major structural damages have been reported in the county at this time. However, major flooding has been reported in different areas there. This is just coming in. Also want to mention urban search and rescue teams have been deployed to southwestern Florida in the early morning hours. They say the winds have died down. We're able to deploy 4 urban search and rescue teams to Southwest Florida right before the sun came up. They're doing reconnaissance, and at First Light, they are doing life-saving work that has begun there. Meantime, we bring you that live shot, St. Augustine, Florida. The waves just crashing up against the coast here. You know we're talking about beach erosions. The coastline could look different after we are done with this storm. On the bottom side of your screen there, you do see that shot of, we've got the radar and the live shot there of Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston, South Carolina, today is your day to get ready, if you haven't yet, all the way up the Georgia coast, the South Carolina coast, and portions of North Carolina as the storm continues to move slowly to the north and northeast into some warmer waters, and then makes a little turn and could head your direction. And that is a major concern, talking about storm surge, heavy rain, and a lot of wind there. So if you haven't prepared, now's the time to do so. There's another shot for you that came in yesterday, video rather, from Fort Myers, Florida. Storm surge has been a huge problem with this storm. As you can recall, we've been talking about this. Meantime, Tropical Storm Ian, as it goes off the coast, as we go through early tomorrow morning, the expected winds at about 65 miles per hour, keeping it a pretty healthy tropical storm. Getting up to maybe 70 miles per hour on this forecast once it gets closer to the South Carolina coast. Remember, that's just if you get to 74 miles per hour, you're talking Category 1 minimal hurricane. Nonetheless, very close to that as we go through Friday evening. Moving over into the lower line areas, and then you get up closer to the hills once you get into the Smokies near Asheville by the time we get into Saturday. So as it moves to the north, reemerges as it moves over the warmer waters, the track of uncertainty, all the yellow lines you see there are some of the forecast models sending almost in a fan-like direction, but basically right into South Carolina for most of those. Then off the coast as it loses its energy, finally back over through into the Atlantic once we get into Wednesday. But in the meantime, moving that slowly over the water is going to cause some major flooding issues. Here's the reason. We talk about the waters in the Gulf, in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean, at least 79 degrees rather, or warmer, for that to be the fuel, the energy that helps those storms develop and really intensify, give them that healthy storm that we've been talking about. The water you can see right there, right in the coast, closer to 79 to 80 degrees or so. It is warm water. It is fuel for the storm. Having said that, we do have tropical storm warnings in place up and down Georgia through Florida and into the Carolinas, mostly South Carolina. Tropical storm warnings, remember, that means those winds will be 39 to 73 miles per hour. And the watch we'll be seeing those in about 36 hours or so. So right along the immediate coast, we need to be careful. The hurricane watch also in place right along the coast as we go through the evening and into tomorrow. Ian's forecast storm, the orange that you see there would be where we would experience those hurricane force gusts, really, up to 74 miles per hour stronger. Watch the yellow area. It's those 40 mile per hour gusts on the outside of that, especially to the north, as that slams right up into the coast as we go into Friday. That does mean peak storm surge. You imagine all of that wind getting pushed up into what looks like a little, like a mitt, like a catcher's mitt. All of that getting pushed up into the area, increasing the storm surge, especially closer to high tide. You're talking in the blue areas, 1 to 3 feet of rain or storm surge above the coast, above the ground, and then 2 to 4 in other places. So imagine 4 feet rather of water. That's like a small person, right? A teenager, if you will, a small one. And that's going to be water that's moving into the coast. It's not water that you're standing in. It's not still water. It's moving quickly. It has debris with it. The Fox model shows the forecast as we go through Friday morning. Look at all of the rain hitting South Carolina, and it continues to come down as the storm slowly moves right closer to the coast. When you look at these numbers, that's rain still to come on top of what we're going to experience with the winds. This is saturating, flooding rain, and that saturated ground, obviously not only the flooding concern, but the trees, the power poles, not really in good, stable soil. A little bit of a wind gust can easily topple those trees and those power lines, as well as those cell phone towers. Here's what we've got with the storm surge and the winds, rather. Savannah, one area that could be hit, very likely to see some high surf as well as some gusty winds. So up and down the coast, even you think about all the little islands, Hilton Head, Jekyll Island, all the islands just off of the coast there, going to experiencing some strong storm surge and some gusty winds. Savannah River, there's some information for you. Look at that, very close to record as it goes up. And a lot of these rivers are filling quickly. So it's not like there's a gradual increase where you've got rain that just keeps coming up. It's just going up quickly with all the rain that continues to come down. Not only that, we talk about the tornado threat. We've been watching tornadoes up and down Florida for several days. These bands come through. You've got winds moving in different directions and different elevations here. And of course, that does give us the chance for tornadoes, water spouts off the coast as well. So maybe you've got a boat docked off the coast. It could easily be bubbling around in the water. And of course, the tornadoes are going to be a major concern moving through the next couple of days as well. There's another live shot. St. Augustine, Florida. Visibility is down. That would be a concern with some of these tornadoes that happen quickly, and they could be rain wrapped. So it would be tough to see. Make sure that your phone is charged right now. Prepare for power outages because you can still watch us and you can still get your notifications. Maybe you know someone who lives there. You can set up on the Fox Weather app a notification for the area so you get the notifications and then you can try to reach them, hopefully, if they've still got cell service in place. Amy, just this is one to watch as we continue to watch it move over closer to the Atlantic as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours.
We do have a little bit of breaking news coming in here from Osceola County, the Sheriff's Office. Osceola, of course, east of I-4, east of Orlando, letting us know that they do not have any flooding. Sort of a reassuring voice here that you can go out onto the roadways there if you have any friends or family in the area. So the coast is clear in Osceola. Then the Sheriff's Office letting folks know that. We do have strong winds that have been knocking over telephone poles, cutting phone service off for many people in Florida, which has made communication very difficult to check in on your loved ones or to find out what's happening there. We're going to bring in Chris Samar of AT&T. President of AT&T. Chris, what is your company doing right now to improve service? This is really a situation where the towers have been taken out by big, huge winds. What will it take to get the service put back in place?
Hey, Amy, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. First, I just want to acknowledge the incredible devastation. And to your point, we're doing everything we can to help the citizens of Florida and the impacted areas. We're in close coordination with the governor. We actually just spoke to him in the Emergency Operations Center. We maintain a permanent presence there. So right now, the situation on the ground, as you said, significant amount of devastation. The cell service is down in parts of the area, but we are quickly moving out. A lot of the issue that we have is power. Cell sites die when they don't have power. So getting cell site generators out there. We have over 180 crews of technicians right now that are fanning out across the Florida area in placing generators on these sites to get them back up and working. In some cases, there's flooded areas. In those cases, we have high water vehicles. We have about 20 of those that we had staged throughout the state so that we can bring generators and fuel out to generators that are out there existing right now. So significant number of those sites had generators already, but we're bringing additional ones out.
Chris, it goes without mentioning that some of the structure, some of the roadways and passageways to get into your cell sites to even look at the damage might be blocked off. We've also heard the possibility of AT&T using drones to get in there and look at what the cell towers are looking like right now. Talk a little bit about that and what information you're able to get back. So some people may not be able to actually drive into these sites yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where those high water vehicles come into place. We have both amphibious vehicles and high water vehicles to help us get through flooded roadways. And then amphibious vehicles when we have significant flooding. We're also in touch, as you know, Sanibel Island, there's an issue with the bridge out to Sanibel Island. We're in touch with FEMA and local first responders. We have very tight relationships with them due to our FirstNet program that we run out of AT&T, which is a network that's for first responders nationwide. And so a significant amount of the first responders in Florida are using our network. FEMA and local first responders are helping us get out to Sanibel Island to recover some of our sites out there. And then to your point on drones, we use drones in some of the hard to get to areas so that we can get up and assess what's wrong with the site itself. So in some cases, based on the wind, the antenna may be tilted one way or another. We have automatic machinery that can tilt those antennas, or we can get someone to climb it and retilt it. Sometimes cabling may be damaged. It helps us understand what the issue is to get the supplies in there so that we can fix the towers. So drones are a great tool that we've used for a few years now, very helpful to us.
Chris, tell me a little bit more about the emergency network that you were just talking about, because Sanibel has been an area where even emergency responders have talked about it was difficult to respond to the needs that they were having during the storm. Now they do not have access to getting a call out or into Sanibel. They're trying to get access there. What is the emergency network? Does that mean it's just for first responders to be able to communicate?
Exactly. So about 6 years ago, the federal government they created a program called FirstNet. And so it's the only first responder network in America designated solely for first responders. It gives them priority access to that network. And a large majority of public safety across the country is now using that network. So in the case of Sanibel Island, we contact FEMA, who we're in close contact with during all of these disasters, and local law enforcement. They help us get out there. Our sites on Sanibel obviously are having some serious challenges right now. Because of the wind and the storm surge. And so the ability to get out there, get technicians out there, generators may be the issue, maybe not, and figure out what's wrong with those sites and get them back up and working as quickly as possible so that first responders can communicate with the people that are impacted out there.
I know this is going to be a tough question for you, but what is your guesstimate on how long it would take to restore some of this communication? If a tower is wiped out, how long does it take to get it back going? Sounds like you've got a generator plan if it's just power, but what if you have a tower knocked over?
That's a great question. So we account for that as well. We have satellite assets that work off of satellite transport, we call it, or backhaul. So we actually have well over 100 of these assets. A lot of them are staged in Florida. There's not 100 in Florida. They're across the country as part of the FirstNet program. We have a significant number of them in Florida. So when a cell site is actually disabled, more than power, maybe it's a backhaul issue or there's damage to the site itself that's going to take a few days or a few weeks to fix, we can pull one of these mobile assets out. It has an antenna that goes up and then it communicates with a satellite, and we can provide temporary coverage where that cell site went down. And so we actually have a number of requests from first responders right now where they've asked us to bring these mobile satellite assets out and recover the network. So we either recover it if it's a power issue with a generator, or we bring one of these satellite assets out and we can very quickly recover it. They're pretty neat looking. It's a giant 1-ton truck with a big satellite dish on the back and an antenna. And we have well over 100 of these throughout the country, but a lot of them in Florida right now to help with the situation there.
Yeah, as we all rely on technology, those redundancies that you have at AT&T is so important for us. We appreciate you taking the time, Chris Sandbar, to talk about all of this and how you're going to restore communication there in Florida after Hurricane Ian. We appreciate your time on Fox Weather.
My pleasure, and thoughts and prayers to all of the people in Florida. Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely. Let's go now to talk a little bit about the storm, where we are now. We've got a live view in Largo, Florida right now. Hurricane Ian, of course, making landfall yesterday just after 3 o'clock near Cayo Costa, Florida. Maximum wind speeds 155 miles per hour, 940 millibar pressure. The lowest pressure just before landfall was around 937 millibars. Looking at the wave action, though, that we're still seeing for St. Augustine as the storm has crossed over Florida and now affecting the east coastline of Florida. We are just not out of it yet. The wrath of Ian continues, and storm surge is still happening at this hour on the opposite coastline. So we are going to still see a decrease in the strength of Ian, but But at the same time, the impacts are not lessened for some of these areas. Once we move into the southeastern portion of the United States, right along the coastline from Georgia up to the Carolinas, we've got very vulnerable coastline to storm surge. We talk about here the statistics, 940 millibar pressure. The lowest that we hit was right before landfall at 937. When we talk about pressure, that also indicates the intensity. So as we see the pressure come up in a storm, that number gets higher. That means the storm is starting to weaken a bit. If we go back to this timeline, we make landfall just before, just after 2 o'clock at 937 millibars. And then look how the millibars start to increase. That pressure increases. And as it does so, we see a lower intensity, which actually equates to lower winds as well. So looking at Tropical Storm Ian's timeline, once we make landfall at 155 miles per hour, we start to see a dramatic decrease in the wind speeds. And so by Wednesday night, we have a decrease down to 115 miles per hour, which, yes, means a weaker storm, but still a hurricane status right through last night, which is what took out a lot of the power. It also kept a sustained wind, throwing that water back up against the shoreline. So Ian's top wind reports are just really jaw-dropping to take a look at. Cape Coral at 140 miles per hour. By the way, multiple reports over 100 miles per hour will allow Ian to tie the top 5 in spot number 4 of strongest landfall Florida storms ever. Cape Coral had a secondary reading at 122 miles per hour and Pelican Bay at 112 miles per hour. So just a large area here of getting wind speeds above 100 miles an hour. Fort Myers at 110, Port Charlotte, 110 mile an hour winds, Grove City, LaBelle, Tarpon Point, 109 miles an hour. These numbers, again, put us in the history books with Ian. When you look at the strongest storms to make landfall in Florida, here's the list. We go back to 1935 for the strongest landfalling storm ever in Florida. That was Labor Day, 185 mile an hour winds. And look at the low pressure there, dropping below 900 millibars, an impressive 892. Andrew, a strong storm, was 165 mile an hour winds with a pressure at 922. Michael in 2018, 160 mile an hour winds and the pressure there at 919. So you can see the correlation. When the pressure drops lower, the wind speeds pick up. And so as we track storms with you, that is an indication for the strength of the storm. Again, deadly storm surge, it's the number one factor when you look at a hurricane, the number one threat. For Fort Myers, the surge is now at the top of the list with Hurricane Ian at 7.25 feet. Now look at the second place, Gabriel. What an impressive almost doubling here for Ian, right? At 7.26. That is just an incredible. Normally, when you look at records, you might see it beating by, a half a foot or something like that, something more reasonable. This was more than 3 feet above. Ian's top rain totals closing in on 2 feet as expected. Northport at 19 inches, Wauchula at 16 and a half, Lehigh Acres over 14 inches, Ona over a foot of water, Clearwater Beach at 10 plus inches, Coral Spring almost 10 inches, Delray Beach. Look at these numbers. This amount of rainfall is well over what they would see an entire month. And so all that water has to find a place to go. That's the reason we're concerned about smaller bodies of water first and the rivers that'll be hitting their major flood stage. So taking a look at some of these numbers here, we have much more to talk about as Ian makes its way back out into the open waters, Craig, before a secondary landfall that we'll be looking at for tomorrow.
Yeah, no kidding. We'll talk about the winds and how much rain to expect as we show you that live shot from St. Augustine Beach, Florida. A lot of the area there completely underwater, and you can see just the wind blowing around. We'll have the latest on Ian as it continues to move out over the Atlantic and eventually back to South Carolina.
With Verizon, you can now get a private 5G network, so you can do more than connect your business. You can make it even smarter. Now ports can know where every piece of cargo is and where it's going. Right on time. Robots can predict breakdowns and order their own replacement parts.
Nice work.
And retailers can get ahead of the fashion trend of the day with a new line tomorrow. With a Verizon private 5G network, you can get more agility and security, giving you more control of your business. We call this enterprise intelligence from the network America relies on.
Oh my gosh, you look great. Thanks to you, I lost 22 pounds. And I lost 40 pounds by signing up with Jenny Craig.
Max Up is Jenny's most effective program ever.
I struggled to lose my baby weight and my confidence was at an all-time low. Jenny helped me turn everything around. With her delicious food and personal coaching, the weight came right off. Now I'm looking and feeling like myself again. What are you waiting for? Sign up now. Jenny works.
The Talk, which is now taking a hiatus.
Sharon Osbourne was fired from The Talk, and The Talk made headlines around the world.
It was unfathomable that that happened on The Talk.
I just kept saying, why are you all doing this to me? Cheryl was stabbing me in the back.
The punishment doesn't fit the crime because there was no crime.
I say when I'm done. Not them.
Tracking Hurricane Ian.
Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this.
As Florida braces for impact, Hurricane HQ has you covered.
We're looking at the potential of a major hurricane.
For up-to-the-minute reports, stay with Fox Weather.
It's really striking the amount of control that China already has in Brazil.
We're going to wake up one day and we're going to ask, how did this happen? And the answer is we let it happen, and there won't be anything we can do about it.
Tucker Carlson Originals, The China Takeover, Brazil, streaming now on.
Welcome back to Fox Weather as we track Ian. Latest information coming in from the National Hurricane Center. Hurricane Ian could reform to a hurricane. It's now a tropical storm, but it could reform back into a hurricane. We are looking at these numbers coming in from the National Hurricane Center, the latest advisory letting us know that Ian is not necessarily done yet. Weakened to a tropical storm, but it's possible that it could then again increase its wind speeds back to hurricane strength. This information just coming into us, Craig. Can't say I'm completely surprised. Thought that we might be able to keep those wind speeds down below the 74 mile an hour mark, but it looks like over the open waters, we're going to be able to see a re-strengthening before yet an additional landfall for the southeastern coast of the U.S.
Yeah, that information coming in just moments ago as it continues to move up to the northeast at about 9 miles per hour. Then turn north, expected to do that later today, followed by another turn toward the northwest with an increase in forward speed Friday night. Of course, that's a major concern. The latest position for it is about 25 miles northeast of Cape Canaveral, Florida, or about 285 miles south of Charleston, South Carolina, an area we've been watching as well. As you look at the track right now, as it goes out over the water, and there you go, by Friday morning, even by later today, 75 mile per hour winds into Friday morning. That puts it as a Cat 1, minimal Cat 1, nonetheless, still a hurricane as it goes out over those warmer waters, which we showed you earlier, about 79 to 81 degrees or so. So that is fuel for this storm to re-intensify. And then the cone does have it mostly over the coast of South Carolina as it heads up to the north and northwest. Charleston would be smack in the middle, but it could go anywhere within that cone. And we continue to bring you the very latest. And boy, this is one to watch. Again, the latest information bringing that in. We've got, say that again, what's up?
The entire coast
Hurricane
of South
warnings.
Carolina now under a hurricane warning with that new information, Craig, that's coming in. So the core of the storm is about 25 miles northeast of Cape Canaveral. And then that puts it about 285 miles south of Charleston. Now's the time to prepare. You've got a hurricane warning now in Charleston because of the strength of this storm. Once again, tropical storm, which will intensify over those open waters. You can see the forecast cone. Of course, the width of it, not that wide, quite frankly, probably about 350 miles there, that width of it. But everybody in that zone under a hurricane warning now to prepare for what is to come late Thursday into Friday, looking at that position. So they're able to go in again and get the center of low pressure and then take the track of the storm and the strength going to go back up above 74 miles per hour. So that's the new information coming into the National Hurricane Center. Ian, just not done yet. We want to get out to Atlantic Beach, Florida right now because we do have right now Jonathan Surrey is on location to talk about an update there and what the conditions are like. Jonathan, what are you seeing?
Amy, we'll take a look behind me. You can see the Atlantic Ocean, the waves just churning out there. And late yesterday, some heavy equipment came in, started shoring up these sand dunes, in particular this public access area, shoring it up with sand in hopes of preventing the waves from crashing over. Well, just minutes before we came on, a large wave came and a small amount of water spilled over. We're not experiencing any flooding in this city just yet, but it's certainly a concern along these coastal areas, the beaches off the coast of Jacksonville. And although there are no mandatory evacuations here in Duval County, the mayor of Jacksonville is urging people in low-lying areas, such as these beachside communities, as well as parts of downtown Jacksonville that flooded back during Hurricane Irma in 2017, to take the threat of this storm seriously, to safeguard their lives and property, and consider voluntarily evacuating any flood-prone areas. Take a look at these palm trees blowing in the wind. They've been doing this since yesterday afternoon, well in advance of the arrival of the brunt of this storm, Ian, as it continues to head across the state of Florida. A weakened version of what it was when it hit the West Coast, but still a formidable threat. Back to you.
Jonathan, your location, a critical one there in Atlantic Beach. It basically runs, straight across from Jacksonville. We're looking at the surge where you are. The projection is around 3 feet for that location, but also inland, there will be a secondary surge for the St. Johns River. Are you hearing any information on that or any preparations they've made for the potential surge there?
Yeah, they are worried about potential flooding along the St. Johns River. There are no mandatory evacuations here in Duval County, but in Clay County, the adjacent county, they have declared a mandatory evacuation for people living along the St. Johns River as a precaution.
Stay safe in your coverage there in Atlantic Beach. Jonathan, sorry, we appreciate that report. We have new video. This just in to Fox Weather, a bird's eye view of the devastation in Fort Myers. Look at this water that has come inland. This is now in daylight. We're able to look across the area. Damage, that's someone's boat that has been positioned in between two homes in a neighborhood, very clearly resting on grass instead of water. Looks like it was tossed from the water there inland. You also look at destruction of property there, maybe some roofs or different pieces of the property ripped apart. And look at this, Fort Myers beachfront, back to the bay. Look at this. You're seeing first responders now. Looks like a fire engine there trying to get in and take a look at some of the destruction and damage that has been done in this area. Definitely, that is sand that has been placed on top of the roadway. So all of that sand displaced, that is the beach washing up beyond the shoreline, beyond those homes, left probably sand inside of the homes as well. But you can see it covering yards and then covering the streets as that fire engine tries to make its way there along Fort Myers Beach. Wow. Definitely the waters have receded, but a narrow beach line and a lot of debris being tossed up and about here in Fort Myers, where the surge completely covered this entire area and sending some sand over there. You see an open area. It looks like a base or some sort of first responder area they've set up. This is a way that they're going to be able to go into some of the areas in Florida, especially along this coastline in Charlotte County, and get an account of what has happened. But the urban search and rescue teams have been deployed to Southwest Florida, and we are expecting that they'll have to make some rescues here as the water recedes. Craig?
All right, Amy. We also want to bring in Fox Weather's Robert Ray with all of the damage that you have been seeing today. Robert, just incredible. The images you've been bringing now as daylight is up. You're out on that pier, and the water still looks a little choppy behind you.
It is, Craig. And look at this. This is part of the pier, the concrete pier cut in half in pieces by the wind and the storm surge. And I'm literally floating on it as if it's a vessel. As you can see, Coast Guard choppers are now surveying the area above us. And I'm going to walk from one of these big concrete blocks to the next to show you the power and the energy that this wind and surge did, ripping each one apart as I move across, and the boats that were tied up and are now piled up like toys here. Just tremendous situation. In fact, this is the bottom of one of the piers because I can see the crustaceans on it. And stand by. Let me just try to get across here, guys, for you in a different position. It's sort of a maneuvering area. And you can see all of this here. There are wood piles, the boats on top of each other on the sides, collapsed out of the picture, out in the water. There are boats that are capsized and they are laying there just rocking and floating. There's office furniture out there, debris and vegetation from trees. And that shows you just how intense this all is. I'm a little out of breath. I apologize, but that is the situation here as Fort Myers just took it on the chin yesterday. And, you know, to hear some of the people out here give their harrowing descriptions of what it was like yesterday as these hurricane force winds came in and the surge flooded downtown or parts of downtown Fort Myers. That water is receded, thankfully, right now. And now we're looking at ground damage really all over the place. Meanwhile, search and rescue, as we've been reporting, continues to go on in the region, specifically down at the shoreline. But nonetheless, Coast Guard is up in the air monitoring this scenario here. And people are starting to come out as the sunshine is here and the light breeze, which usually happens here in Southwest Florida, is out. And people really reeling as many folks potentially are still stranded in areas as the water recedes. We saw that that causeway on Sanibel Island destroyed. You can't get in and out of there. So folks, Governor DeSantis and federal officials, Cajun Navy, you name it, people are going to try to get out there and help folks that are in trouble. Meanwhile, the system, as you've been forecasting, keeps going up. And I will tell you, anyone who's watching up to the north, even though it is not a hurricane any longer, Ian is still very dangerous and packs a punch. Take it from me where I'm standing and the experience yesterday of going through all that wind and that energy here in Fort Myers as Ian came ashore just 20 miles from here yesterday about 3:10 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yeah, Robert, you make a great point there. When you think about the marinas and a lot of people who have left their watercrafts behind, hopefully didn't stay behind, because sometimes people live on these watercrafts and we've seen images before where people have stayed behind trying to ride out the storm. But your point, certainly do not stay there if that is your home. You've got to leave it behind and head to a better place, especially as the storm goes toward the Carolinas.
Absolutely. And you know, I want to make this point too. Viewers may be asking, well, why did people leave their vessels here when they knew a hurricane was coming? And the answer to that is actually quite simple. The projection of where Hurricane Ian was going was so all over the place as it had its own mind. And so, you know, at one point, you know, it was closer to the bottom of the peninsula, and then it went to the Tampa area, and then we had the possibility of even the Panhandle, maybe even, you know, the border of Alabama and Florida, and then eventually came here. So I think for those that perhaps are out of town residents and have their, you know, had their boats docked here, they just couldn't get down here to do it. And that's what happens. And especially with a system that just decided to change its mind as much as it did and grow as it came up past Cuba and the Gulf, as it made its ascent up here and landed. Just so tough of a situation on so many different levels. This is such a complex system. And now the complexity of the aftermath and search and rescues is ongoing and happening right now.
Yeah, it's so true when you talk about that. And the size of the storm, Robert, was huge. And you don't want to outrun these storms or outsail these storms. And the fuel was another issue, right? So all of these factors came together.
Yeah.
The images you continue to bring us. Thank you. Be safe out there. And we'll check in with you again in just a bit. But again, Amy, it just goes to show that storm was just so massive. You can't really, you know, get away from the storm. And it was one of those storms that just kept coming. And the storm surge was a major, major problem.
And do not count Ian out just yet, because this tropical storm is forecast to reform as a hurricane. It's going to go out into the open waters. We want to bring in hurricane specialist Brian Norcross. Brian, the National Hurricane Center, sending out this new advisory. We knew it was possible. This low pressure system goes out into the open waters, and it gets the opportunity to strengthen back up to 74-mile-an-hour winds or stronger.
Yeah, a little bit stronger than originally forecast. And the reason is that this storm has relentlessly stayed to the right side of the cone. So the challenge has been with this storm, and I think it's going to always be until we maybe come up with a better way or a better way to communicate it, is that people tend to look at the middle of the cone. The storm was forecast to go to Tampa. Well, the right side of the cone was right about Fort Myers or just a little bit north where the storm went. And for whatever reason, and this is going to require significant research, I think, this storm has wanted to stay right all the time. And so it continued to do that. So now that we have the storm exiting here on the right side of the cone, it's a shorter distance across Florida than if it had gone up here somehow and done something else and spent more time over land, which was the original idea. So it would have been a little bit weaker. Now it's come out over the ocean, and it's almost a hurricane again, because the distance that it went on the right side of the cone was a little bit shorter. So yes, this might be a hurricane. I mean, the difference in miles per hour of wind is 10 miles per hour or so. It's not going to make that much difference in the impact, but hopefully it'll get more people's attention because this is expected to be a significant storm. And it's still going on in Florida. We sort of had phase one of this disaster in the Fort Myers area, which we've all seen, and we're going to have a lot more to see there, I'm sure. And then phase two is this incredible flood from this channel of air that has come over central Florida. We talked about this yesterday. And look, there you can see very clearly the center of circulation, and it is still staying to the right side of the cone. There's our rain totals. We're going to look at the cone in just a second. There's the incredible rain totals. 12 to 18 inches with embedded areas up to 24 inches, and some areas even more than that in small neighborhoods in this area from Orlando over toward Daytona Beach up to St. Augustine and the coastal sections of north central Florida. I mean, it's going to take a long time for this water to go down. This is not going to be, okay, it's over today and tomorrow we go about our business. And then we have the incredible rain down here that's also going to take time even for the creeks to fill in the area of Arcadia and Sebring and up to those areas in central Florida. So this is not at all over in terms of it's happening in the peninsula of Florida, even as the center of the storm goes offshore to the east. All right, here is the new cone from the National Hurricane Center. And the idea is that it's going to move up in the direction of Charleston, South Carolina, plus or minus, or let's say the South Carolina coast. And there you see Hurricane Center has 75-mile-an-hour winds on it. Now, the upper level winds are super unfavorable here for development, for strengthening. So the thing is that the system is so big and so close to hurricane strength that with that little bit of extra heat, even under these hostile conditions, they went ahead and decided, okay, let's go ahead and boost it up because there's a decent chance. I'm not saying it won't do it. I'm just saying that, it's a close call because the atmospheric conditions are so hostile. And there's another cold front involved, and it's not really a fully tropical system anymore. It's going to be morphing into more of a northern latitude, kind of a winter-timey kind of system. Not that makes any difference to people that are going to get the storm surge and get the very heavy rain that's going to come with it. Now, looking north here, we see the hurricane warnings for the entire coast of South Carolina there. That's the purples. And look how far inland the tropical storm warnings go, all the way up to Winston-Salem, down to include Augusta and the Georgia coast. The yellows are tropical storm watches. We'll see if they get updated or not. I suspect the reason they only have a watch means possible, and a warning means likely. So the reason we have that difference in Georgia is because near the coast, you're more likely to get the stronger winds. Inland, on the left side of the storm, so the indication is that the storm is going to go into South Carolina, and so the winds will be coming off the land here. And so the idea is it won't be as strong. Now, why there's a tropical storm warning for the Augusta area and not for a little farther south. I'm not sure what the thinking is there. I'll have to research what the National Weather Service is thinking. But the idea is the winds certainly could gust at hurricane strength on the entire South Carolina coast, and then moving inland. And as we look at the potential for rain, we see that there's this huge bullseye down here in Florida, which I showed you a moment ago, but then a large rain area that goes all the way up into the Appalachians, covers much of Virginia, over toward the Asheville area and North Carolina, covering much of the eastern part of the southeastern U.S. And these are rain amounts in the 3 to 8 inch range. Well, that doesn't sound like that much compared to these Florida amounts, but if it's in mountainous country, that takes the rain and then focuses it on rivers and streams and so forth. So flooding can actually be significantly worse with less rain in mountainous territory than in flat areas. But of course, in Florida, where we have, reports of rainfall amounts in the 20 to 25 inch range, obviously severe flooding as a result of that. All right, guys, back to you.
I want to talk about a couple of points you made. First of all, let's go back to the cone, the forecast cone, because that is a message that is very critical for the public to receive. The cone is a forecast for as far east or as far west, but we want you to prepare within the cone if your area is there. It doesn't matter if you're all the way on the very edge to the right or very edge to the left of the cone. We saw that already with the landfall there on the west coast of Florida. But just speak to the importance of not thinking that that concept is right down the middle, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm so far away from where the middle of that cone is, I'm out of it.
Yeah, well, so we have two issues there, Amy. One is, like you say, people think about the middle of the cone and, okay, it's not coming here. And then the media hype goes around and around and around. And I don't say that in a negative way. I mean, everybody gets focused, is the point, on kind of the middle of the cone. But then the other problem is that incredibly bad weather happens outside the cone. The cone is only about the center of the storm. So the bigger the storm, the farther outside the cone the bad weather occurs. This was a big storm. It wasn't a giant storm, but it was a big storm. So we had, terrible weather, terrible effects way outside the cone, like Naples and Fort Myers. The cone edge was right on the Fort Myers area, probably included the city of Fort Myers, but did not include Naples. Well, there was never any thought that the bad weather wouldn't extend way outside the cone, but I don't think we're good at communicating that. People, even if they are looking at the cone, they're kind of thinking that that contains the bad weather, when all it does is track the center, which very often in a big storm has the worst weather with it, but doesn't have all the bad weather, as we saw in Naples and lots of areas outside the cone with this very large circulation.
Excellent points to point out there. And we will cap it off by talking about the vulnerability of where you live, because there in the southeast, we have a high vulnerability for two reasons. One, coming off supersaturation. The summer has had record rain for areas of the southeast. So saturated soils, and then the topography. We're talking about hilly terrain. You get once above sea level, you start to get some of those mountains, even inland as far as the Virginias. We're going to be looking at water racing downhill, getting to the lowest spot. Water finds its way. So two other factors here that are much different than the west coast of Florida or even the east coast of Florida once we go into that southeast coastline from Georgia north into the Carolinas.
Yeah, we have another issue in southwest Florida, actually, and that is that hurricanes don't happen there very often. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, a lot of people both kind of lived in a way and set up their life there, or set up their second homes or whatever they were, in a way that really did not have hurricanes in mind. And so that's a reason that we're going to have a number of fatalities here, I think, and a lot of damage that you wouldn't have on the East Coast, because people are just more ready for hurricanes and are more likely to have a plan in place that allows them to get their boat up the river. In Miami, for example, and Fort Lauderdale, there's a whole procedure when a hurricane is coming on what people do with their boats and where they moor them and protect them and do all kinds of things. Not that you can protect every boat, but there really is a big plan that's been in place for many decades there because hurricanes are a more regular thing on the southeast coast, and that's not part of the southwest coast. And you're right, Amy, the interaction of the tropical moisture and the tropical system and the mountains is a very, very dangerous combination, as we saw in Hurricane Irene in Vermont in 2011, where we had just whole towns wiped out in Vermont because that water came down into the gullies. So as this one goes up into the Appalachians, we have to be very aware of that. People there have to know, have to be on high ground, essentially, and not near the rivers or the streams where that water is going to drain.
They're giving us a little extra time here, Brian. I want to bring up the point of an I-named storm yet again being a major catastrophic storm. We've had 13 I storms there in the alphabet that have already been retired. Now Ian likely would be following the same suit. When we talk about getting into the 9th named storm of the season, what is it about the conditions? We know sea surface temperatures are warmer, but really what is it about this time of year when we're rolling up on the ice storm? Is it just a bad omen, or is it all about the conditions coming together favorably?
Yeah, it's the time of year, really. It's the peak of hurricane season. And, you know, we generally think of the peak as being about the 10th or 11th of September, when the conditions are ideal to have a named storm in the Atlantic. But it takes a week or so after that before you kind of peak on when you're likely to get a landfall, most likely to get a landfall in the U.S., because these storms in the Atlantic have to kind of migrate west, and that takes time. So the landfall peak is delayed from the actual having a storm somewhere, wherever in the Atlantic, even if it's over by Africa peak. They're different times. And actually that first, the peak of when they're going to have a storm is actually shifted a day or two later, although we still kind of notice it on the 10th of September. So that's mostly it, that through that whole time in September and into early October, the combination of the atmospheric effects and the warm ocean waters come together. Then when we get to October, which is not far from now, then it sort of changes in the eastern Atlantic, but it doesn't change in our part of the world. This is, in fact, October is the most likely storm to have a hurricane in the Florida Peninsula, because storms tend to come from south to north and bend to the right like Ian did. That's the kind of nominal average track once we get to October. So this was more of an October kind of pattern for Hurricane Ian, which is not an uncommon pattern. Is sort of a combination. The September storms that hit Florida tend to be stronger. The October storms tend to be more frequent, a little more frequent, and they come from the south and bend like Ian. So Ian was a little bit of both September and October type storms.
And it just seems like in recent history, we've seen this time of year, this letter of the alphabet, because when you go back in those 13 retired storms, 10 of them have happened in the last 20 years. So recently, last 2 decades, we've seen that peak, and studies will be done about how it coincides with the elements, the conditions, and all the ingredients coming together for these strong storms. Would you say that some of this rapid intensification also happening this time of year, when you look back at the storms that we've seen over the last decade? I mean, they get strong right off the coastline. That has also been a trend that we continue to see with some of these storms.
There is some evidence that the rapid intensification is due to a changing climate. It's not conclusive, I don't think, but we do know that the sea levels are higher for sure, and we do know there is more moisture in the atmosphere. Those are for sure issues related to the fact that the climate has changed, over our lifetimes. So, the rapid intensification is active research, and like I said, there is indication that this trend toward rapid intensification is increasing. The issue is, of course, that we don't have records that go back and measure this precisely very far into the past. And we think of Florida having been hit by a lot of hurricanes recently. It's actually been hit by fewer hurricanes recently, and fewer strong hurricanes recently than happened back in the you take the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s into the early 60s, if all that started happening again, people would think the world was coming to an end. It's just that Florida wasn't as developed back then, so it's not as top of mind. People didn't experience it in the way that we experience them now, and the fact that we see everything on media and on our phones and whatnot changes our the impact of these storms happening, and the fact that the Florida coast is all developed. Back in the day, Fort Myers, you see where Fort Myers is located, way up the river. Why did they develop it way up the river? Because they didn't want to get hit by hurricanes. So, but now we've built right out to the water, and so the effects and the impacts of hurricanes are so much more dramatic now than they were, back when those frequent hurricanes were coming ashore. More frequent hurricanes were coming ashore in Florida back in the day. In fact, the number of landfalls, we'll see if this starts to change, because I don't know anybody that can tell us why this is the case, but the overall number of landfalls in the U.S. has been going down, and slightly. It's not a whole lot. We'll see if that's kind of random or not. But if you look at the last 100 years or so, there used to be more landfalls of strong hurricanes in the United States. It's an interesting and unfortunate fact if we think that, okay, these things have a randomness to them, and to get an average, they have to come back. Let's hope not.
Makes perfect sense. We are living differently, not necessarily got to apply all this to the storms and the weather changing, but we are living differently. So the perspective there is so critical. Fox Weather hurricane specialist Brian Norcross, thank you. We'll be checking in with you as we get updates throughout the day. Right now, you're looking at a live picture of St. Augustine, Florida, where the surge is coming in. We now have an indication that the forecast will take Tropical Storm Ian back to possibly hurricane status, going to the open waters of the Atlantic and making a secondary U.S. landfall. We'll be talking more about this when we come right back on Fox Weather.
Tracking Hurricane Ian.
Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this.
As Florida braces for impact, Hurricane HQ has you covered.
We're looking at the potential of a major hurricane.
For up-to-the-minute reports, stay with Fox Weather.
The Talk, which is now taking a hiatus.
Sharon Osbourne was fired from The Talk, and The Talk made headlines around the world.
It was unfathomable that happened on The Talk.
I just kept saying, why are you all doing?
What's going on, folks? Can you guys all hear me? Can you guys all hear me? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Can everybody in here hear me? Let me see if I can do something here. Eric, thank you for responding. So, came in just to kind of check to see how everybody is doing. I guess a lot of people wanted to make sure that I kept this up. Came home for a little bit just to check to see how the stream was going. It looked like the stream is going pretty well. Thank you guys for all tuning in. Don't forget, folks, I know this is like a live coverage of the Hurricane Ian, and hopefully, you guys do me a favor and don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and like it and all that good stuff. So people can stay, hit the like button so it can be recommended to others. Now, again, the reason why we chose to do it this way is because there are people that are in Florida. There are people that are in Florida that I know, friends, family, I call them my family, but they're in Florida. And they're in Florida, and some of them here. Let me let y'all. I'll let y'all see me. Let me let y'all see me here. But bam, there we go. All right. Anyway, there are people who are in Florida that are friends and family and a lot of them lost power. But fortunately, some of the cell phone towers actually stayed up. So some people still got cell phone services. And Captain Spires, thank you for the live stream of the Florida hurricane. You are welcome. Check Cash, I am having a great day. I got to shoot back and do some things here in a little bit, and I'll come back and do some coverage of some different stories that people have sent in me besides this. But like I mentioned, there are people, see, I'm getting pinged right now. There are people who are in Florida right now that are friends and family that they've lost power, but for some reason the cell phones and everything seem to be working pretty well. Some of them got backup generators. Some of them have extra batteries, to power their phones. Like, you have like the charge up thing you can use, the little port, whatever you call it, I don't know. But anyway, they're able to have cell phone services. So by me playing this live coverage of the hurricane, they are able to stay up to date. So some people might think, what does that mean? So when we got hit with the hurricane back, I think that was 2017, 2018, it is important. And the reason why is because if they got cell phone services and they are able to tune into my channel and see live coverage, if they are away from their homes, at least at least they are getting updates to what's going on where their homes are. So that's why I kind of had to stream it up here for a little bit. So yeah, so some people ask, like, as far as the coverage and everything go, what is that doing to help them? And that's what it's doing. If you have a cell phone and they still have access to the internet, Wi-Fi, et cetera, if they're able to watch my channel, and while I'm streaming full coverage of it, the ones that live down in certain areas that have been flooded out or whatever like that, the news is updating them on like how bad the damage is, if they're able to return back to the area, if there's down power lines, et cetera. Now, guys, there was some weird stuff that people have been sending me, though. Some of the people that live down there, they have sent me pictures of like alligators, like in the freaking street. They also have sent me videos of showing like a shark, what looked like a shark that was in the street as well. So it's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there, which when we got hit back in 2018, y'all, I'm telling you, a buddy of mine, in Florida, Ron actually had video and everything of he's like, he was training as EMS paramedic, and they had video of like people's limbs being found, like limbs were being found, an arm here, a leg there. So anyway, I just wanted to update you guys on that, and I'll be coming back to this again. Don't forget, double check to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and all that good stuff. And I'll be still showing you guys video of this. So let me see. I'll get back to this and we will go from there.
At the appropriate time. But what we're seeing now is that folks did fuel up. They did take precautions. They did prepare as we asked them to do, pleaded with them to do. And so that caused many of the stations to run out of gas. So now we have strategically prepared for that. And you will start seeing now that the storm has passed through at least the west coast of Florida. We expect it to leave the state entirely around 1 p.m. on the East Coast. You'll start seeing those stations resupply. Those will be stocked again as soon as possible. This is always an issue when you have a storm come through. And so we're prepared to do that. And folks should start seeing that. That should not affect pricing. And again, if folks think that gas stations are jacking up the prices egregiously, and of course we're looking at whatever the price was about 30 days ago and comparing that to now to see if there's a discrepancy in price, they should report that to the price gouging hotline.
For sure. Oftentimes you hear about hotels also putting the price up. Maybe they've already checked in, but they can't go anywhere yet. They're still evacuated. They can't go back. What should they do in that situation if the price of the hotel is going up all of a sudden, or they're trying to find a new place and they can't because it's just so expensive?
That's a great question. And oftentimes, again, that's why I said the demand on those essential supplies might change from when we were normally seeing a lot of gas and water contacts. Now we'll start seeing hotels. People are trying to either move from a home that's been damaged in an area of a state of emergency, or so that, again, we probably will start seeing more contacts related to hotels. But remember, price gouging laws remain in effect in areas where there is a state of emergency, where the state of emergency has been declared. And so if you do see a hotel or a lodging situation that starts, jacking up prices that is well outside what they would normally charge, you can always download the No Scam app or report it to the price gouging hotline.
And can we talk a bit about those laws? What happens to those people who are caught for bumping up the prices? Are there, when they get caught, is there something that they have to face, fines? What are they looking at?
Yeah, you look at, it's about $1,000 per violation, which, as you know, there could be multiple in a 24-hour period. So up to $25,000 fine in a 24-hour period. That's no small amount. So, we're always trying to tell folks, this is not something to scoff at. You need to pay attention to the price gouging laws. But really what is great about Floridians, whether it's crime, we have a star tips hotline. Floridians are always helping help us solve crimes and other matters that are challenges to communities. During times of emergency, they are just as helpful and willing to work with government and willing to help us make sure everyone gets through this in a positive, proactive way. I mean, there's going to be a lot of destruction. There's going to be a lot of damage and recovery here. We want to make sure people aren't using this event to make a profit.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, because you think about so many people who are new to Florida. Floridians have been so welcoming and taking care of each other. Those who are new have to be made aware of some of these laws and make sure that they know that they're not being taken advantage of. We talked about the price of gas, hotels, but that also goes for things like lumber, any type of supplies that you need to go prepare or to restore and help make some repairs to your home or boat, whatever's been damaged.
Correct. So these are essential supplies, anything you would need to safeguard you, your property, your family during a state of emergency, from tarp to lumber to, water. All of these things can be considered essential supplies. If you have questions about that, what would qualify, again, you can download the No Scam app. You can also go to myfloridalegal.com, and that will explain how those laws apply and what that might include.
And before, I have to ask you, have you heard of any price gouging so far? Any reports coming in so far?
We have had numerous contacts with our office. As I stated before, we have, numerous matters under review and have already started issuing preservation letters to preserve evidence so that we can pursue those. We haven't seen in prior disasters, we saw really egregious examples. We haven't seen as much of that during this storm. And a lot of that, I think, is due to preparation and warning and working with our organizational partners and individuals to make sure they understand this is what the law is. You can't use this emergency time and this sharp rise in demand to justify profit during a state of emergency. And so we're going to be looking at that. Of course, we're going to let you know if we see problems. We're trying to keep those lines of communication open, but we haven't seen the same type of egregious examples that we've seen in prior storms. But certainly there have been contacts, there have been investigations that we're reviewing, and we'll continue to do that because, as you know, it didn't end just because the hurricane leaves the state. The states of emergency are still in place. We need people to make sure that they can provide and protect their homes. And so those laws will remain in place as we try to recover here in Florida.
Absolutely. Ashley Moody, Attorney General for Florida, thank you so much for coming on Fox Weather and explaining what's going on there. We really appreciate your time and all of the information. Again, the app is No Scam. We do want to go out now to Fox Weather's Brandy Campbell, who has been, can you hear us, Brandy, out in Kissimmee?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. So we're here still in Kissimmee, where water rescues have been happening out here. So we've moved around from time to time, and now you can see officials out here with their boats and they have been picking people up from these apartments, and they've picked up several people. Earlier, when I checked in with the fire chief, they had about 120 or so people that they have taken to a shelter. Now, at this area, they have 47 people that they've rescued. If you take a look further down the street, you can see an airboat coming up with some more folks on it. So this has been an evolving situation here in Kissimmee this morning. Part of this apartment complex underwater on the first level, and they've just been going around taking people out, using these airboats to get them to safety, taking people to a local local high school to keep them safe during this time. So it's been very difficult for these people. Obviously, they've been impacted. They're experiencing a flood and loss of property. I spoke with one guy. He came out here to help out his friend, and he said he's never seen anything like this before. I spoke with a woman. She didn't want to go on camera, which is completely understandable, but she said they lost everything in their first floor of their apartment. So lives are definitely being affected during this storm and the aftermath of it. It's still raining out here. We are getting gusts of wind every now and then, and it's just continuing. And they're going around in this city, especially around areas that have bodies of water near them that are more prone to flood. So there you go. You can see them bringing in a couple of people. It's going to be a little loud via airboat. So this is the sheriff's department and the fire department here in Kissimmee. So we're going to continue following the story as they continue to rescue people after Hurricane Ian passes through the state. Guys?
And Brandy, looking at the label on there, it looks like it's Wild Florida Airboats tours. So are you seeing a lot of that, people, the community coming together and just helping out no matter what, where they're from and what they're doing?
Right. So this boat actually is contracted by the fire department. And so that's why you're seeing something that's outside of local officials. But we have the sheriff's department, FWC out here. So they, in a sense, yes, they're coming together. And like I said, I spoke to a guy earlier who ended up helping to save about 5 people in this area. So you can see family, young ones, everybody being impacted during this time.
Oh, gosh. And Brandy, it's tough. You see the man there with a device to help him walk, but then you saw that little kid just looked, it's tough to see that. You're seeing families and people of all ages trying to be rescued out here. Where you're standing, about how far back are these rescues going, do you think? Are we able to tell?
Well, we haven't been able to see just how far back they're going, but if you look, if we can zoom as far as we can, there's a corner and it turns, and we've seen the boat come from behind there, and we know that there are cars that were submerged almost to the roof, and it's likely it was above the roof because the water levels have been going down. But the video I've seen from the guy that helped rescue people, the water was to the roof. So it's pretty high, but we don't know how far back, but likely behind this apartment complex where those cars are also located. Back to you.
Is the water moving? It looks like it's moving a little bit, but it's still raining a little bit. Is it moving rather quickly, or is it kind of still moving with the wind a little? Doesn't look like it's moving quite as much.
Yeah, I mean, we are getting the constant breeze, but definitely those wind gusts every now and then that shakes the trees. But, you know, it's just a constant situation out here with the weather. It's very inconsistent out here. And thankfully, you know, the water levels are going down a little bit, or I should say a lot, when they say that first level was, you know, completely flooded. So things are going down here.
For sure. Have you been able to talk to anyone as they've been coming off of the boats or anyone near you? I'm sure they've been grateful for what's going on, but just what they've experienced as the storm was coming through and dumping all the rain and the wind.
Right. Yeah, I spoke with one woman and she was actually pregnant. So I couldn't imagine having gone through this when you're carrying. And she was, you know, in high spirits, but at the same time, she's like, I lost everything. But I mean, most importantly, they are safe. They are alive. We haven't heard of any injuries. So that is the most important thing. But at the same time, there's emotions running. I've seen also someone coming out here crying because I couldn't imagine what it would be like to lose everything in an instant from a hurricane.
Yeah. Also, do they have other teams there to help out with fuel to help them make sure they can come and go? Have you seen them able to refuel some of these?
I'm sorry, Craig. I'm going to get you to say that one more time for me.
Oh, no problem. I can hear it's loud behind you as they've got their engines going. Are they able to refuel, or do they have some fuel to help them continue with these water rescues?
Right. We haven't had any word on how they're continuously going, but they have been going in and out of areas. So I would assume they've been able to kind of tag team these efforts, because at first we saw a lot of the fire department out here. Now it's FWC. So, and of course they're spread out across the city as well.
Just incredible. And the stories that are coming out of these, so many people, obviously some of these people who are rescuing as well. Brandy, have you talked to the rescue people? Because their families are obviously in and around the area, maybe being affected if they're from the area.
Right. I have spoken to them, not from their personal perspective, but just from being out here. And it's honestly, you know, an evolving situation, but they're doing the good work out here. I mean, they might be wet, but they're like, we're getting people to safety.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? The community coming together, no matter where you're from or, you know, anything you can do to help out. You talked about the water being up above some of these cars and receding in some cases. Obviously, have you been able to see some debris in the water? When you've got that much water coming down, there's often debris left behind.
Right. I mean, the main, I guess, type of debris that we are seeing is from the trees, and I would imagine from the high winds that we experienced in this area. So if you look around, not so much obviously in the water. Well, actually, yeah, if you look down in the water, there's a pretty hefty size of a tree branch, but just throughout the roads, there's just broken pieces of limbs from these trees, because overnight the winds, they were howling.
Right.
If you were up around 2-3 o'clock in the morning. So there's definitely debris everywhere across this area of Florida.
These first responders are incredible. Is there anyone nearby that you can walk up to and talk to if you feel comfortable asking them a question? If somebody's nearby and if they're able to help out? I know they're doing rescues right now.
Yeah, they've been pretty busy. We can see they've been responding with each other. So it's kind of, you don't want to stop them while they're working.
Right. And we don't want to lose you either.
Them corresponding with each other. Yes.
All right. No worries. We don't want to lose you either. But if you do get a chance, we'd love to hear from them once we're done here. But
of course.
Thank you for all of your reporting. We can see some of them are loading back up. Do you think some of them are done with their rescues?
Well, I believe they're probably going to move locations. They've been going from area to area, and we've kind of been following them this morning. So I would imagine that they probably have another area to target, but I'll confirm that after this live shot.
Absolutely. Brandy Campbell, thank you so much for all the reporting and the visuals that you're bringing. So many stories. We look forward to talking with you again, because we'd love to hear from some of them and their experiences. One of them right behind you, walking toward you. Is he available?
Yes. Excuse me, guys. Are y'all able to? We're live on television for Fox Weather. Y'all are. I got to do the good work. There we
That's
go.
true.
So they are very busy today, guys. Yes,
it's about
very
lives.
busy out here trying to make sure people are safe.
Absolutely. It's about saving lives and doing the rescues that are out there. Thank you so much, Brandy Campbell. We'll check in with you a bit. I know that you're following them. So thanks for all your hard work and being out there. These are the stories that we keep bringing you that we continue to follow as well. Meantime, we also have another Fox reporter out there, Fox Weather reporter Nicole Valdez. Nicole Valdez, we've been checking in with you as well. Now from Tampa, how are things looking where you are?
Craig, still a bit windy here, but I got to be honest, a majority of the worst of that storm seems to have spared the Tampa area. I know a lot of people here are very grateful, especially seeing the images we are seeing coming out of the Orlando and the Southwest Florida area. But I want to point out really a unique impact that we're seeing here, not just specifically to the Bay in Tampa Bay. And you'll notice what you have all described as kind of a reverse storm surge effect. So when Hurricane Ian made landfall yesterday on Florida's Gulf Coast, instead of seeing all of the water from the bay pushed onto shore and flooding some of the homes and businesses behind me, instead you saw it get sucked back in deeper into the bay. And this is the result, these dry patches all along the shoreline here. It's a very interesting impact, something that some have told me they remember seeing about 5 years ago when Hurricane Irma moved over the Tampa Bay area as well. So not something that many are used to seeing, but absolutely not not nearly as horrific of an impact as we are seeing in other areas. I do want to tell you, we're hearing about a lot of focus to try to get help and the resources that were here in Tampa Bay, as many of them prepared to potentially see that direct impact. A lot of those are being sent down to Southwest Florida, hopefully to help a lot of the water rescues that we know are really the priority right now. So overall, it has been much better news. Tampa Bay very much had fared much more favorable in this storm. But of course, we know that the focus really needs to be in those areas that are either still seeing the effects of that storm over on the east coast of Florida or more to our south that absolutely need the help right now, Craig.
It's so good. And thankfully, I don't imagine more people have gone out there. I know you saw that yesterday, Nicole Valdez. Hopefully we were saying, hey, this is not what you want to be doing, because that water will be coming back.
Oh, we know it will. It's just a matter of time. We've seen the water level kind of ebb and flow today. So this is actually a lot more water than we saw yesterday when we literally saw teens. I know you and I were talking about this yesterday, walking all along this area here. Some of them grabbed some of this mud and were writing their names and their initials on the side here. And we were so nervous for them. Again, really just not sure how quickly that water was going to start to rise again, as really Hurricane Ian was just moving on to shore there. So that's something that we never want to see happen. We want so many people to stay safe, and knowing that there are, again, people's lives who are still at risk, thousands that may still need to be rescued in so many areas in Florida. We're thankful that, again, the people of Tampa Bay can feel a little bit more at ease, but they are so focused as well to getting the resources and the help that Southwest Florida needs down to that area.
And behind you, Nicole, I see a lot of traffic, a lot of cars. There are people starting to get back and assess their damage, get back to their way of life, if you will, now that things are a little more calm in Tampa.
We did just get an update from Hillsborough County officials. So the emergency order for the Hillsborough County area has been lifted, and evacuation orders have also been lifted. So it seems as if, you're right, people are starting to get out again. They want to check on their homes. They want to see if anything was blown away by some of the winds we saw here. Some of them may be going back after knowing that they did evacuate, which is really good news. I'll tell you, earlier this morning, we heard about 7,000 or so people were waking up in shelters today because they really listened to the warnings from those emergency officials who told them it is best to get out, knowing that Tampa Bay area could have seen a direct hit from Ian, especially with how strong those winds are and how much water we were expecting to fall. People listened, they got out, they got to a safer place and went to a shelter. So that's great news. But yes, it looks like as things start to calm down now, as people recognize that the damage here, not nearly as significant as it has been in other places, are starting to try to not only return to their lives, but again, do what they can to help their neighbors in the state of Florida.
All right, Nicole Valdez, thanks so much from Tampa, Florida. Thank you for all the reporting, the stories you're bringing us as people head back to their homes and maybe picking up their pets too if they left them in shelters. We'll check in with you again in just a bit. Nicole Valdez from Tampa, Florida. Meantime, new video just to Fox Weather of Ian's aftermath in Gasparilla Island there. Boy, just look at this, how sad this is here in Florida. A lot of these mobile homes, manufactured homes, just gone. This is just north of Cayo Costa, where Ian made landfall 3:05 yesterday afternoon, Eastern time, of course. And the winds, the rain were whipping through there, just taking apart a good portion of this neighborhood. Tough to see. This is when you that happened here. Look at some of these homes have just been leveled in some cases. A lot of these people, I hope, evacuated, heeded the warning, and took off. Remember, as the winds were coming on through, the storm surge was incredible. We talked about the chance for tornadoes in and around with some of these storms, but the winds just goes to show how much destruction came through here. That, again, new video coming into Fox Weather. Tough to see these images now that the sun has come up. Of course, we are finding more of the images that are coming through, more of the destruction, more of these heartbreaking stories of people who don't have homes to come back to. We're hoping that they were gone and took advantage of the evacuations. A lot of these islands, remember, could be cut off from a way to get back to the mainland there. So once the storm is coming through, a lot of these fire and rescue first responders saying, we can't get to you. It's just too dangerous. So this is one area that we are getting some of the video that's coming in. We will continue to get more video coming in as we continue to watch this storm. We're tracking Ian, now expected to become a hurricane again once it goes over the warm waters of the Atlantic and back toward the Carolina coast, South Carolina coast. We leave you with this live shot right now of St. Augustine, Florida. The road no longer there. It is covered, submerged in water. You can just make out those traffic lights just below where it reads St. Augustine, Florida. Storm surge has been a major concern. Of course, the rain continues to come down, and we'll talk more about where this storm is going. Time it all out for you coming up right here on Fox Weather.
Next up, we have David St. James with a look at the financial markets. David?
I got this. My son Dave Jr. is busy, but I watch a lot of financial news on Sling TV. Here's a hot tip. Don't store all your crypto under your mattress. Doesn't grow on trees, you know.
Cut to commercial.
With Sling, choose your channel lineup of live sports, news, and entertainment. Be confident it's the TV you love for a price you'll love.
Just buy the crypto with your checkbook.
Maybe too confident. Sling. Try us today.
Start Saturday strong with Big Noon Saturday on Fox. Touchdown, Michigan! Blake Corum leads Michigan's dominant ground game in a tough road test against Iowa. Wow! All part of Big Noon Saturday on Fox.
The Talk, which is now taking a hiatus.
Sharon Osbourne was fired from The Talk, and The Talk made headlines around the world.
It was unfathomable that that happened on The Talk.
I just kept saying, why are you all doing this to me? Cheryl was stabbing me in the back.
The punishment doesn't fit the crime because there was no crime.
I say when I'm done. Not them.
Shannon Bream is the new host of Fox News Sunday.
I've had this front row seat to history for the last 15 years. The policies that are set here in the nation's capital affect everybody living in this country.
Now, a proud Sunday morning tradition continues.
I think for a lot of people, it sets the tone for the week. I'm excited to have these longer form conversations where you really dig into what matters and to really call people to task.
Don't miss Shannon Bream as she hosts Fox News Sunday.
Welcome back to Fox Weather. Ian, now a tropical storm after making landfall in southwestern Florida on Wednesday as one of the strongest hurricanes to ever hit the United States.
The powerful Category 4 hurricane, it just unleashed some fierce winds of 150 miles per hour. The storm continues to bring damaging winds, life-threatening storm surge, widespread flooding, as it continues to crawl northeast and threatens South Carolina as a possible second U.S. landfall. And now National Hurricane Center expecting that to become a hurricane once again. Welcome to Fox Weather. I'm Craig Herrera.
And I'm Kelly Costa.
Yeah, we have new video in right now to Fox Weather. Jaw-dropping damage from Ian. This is from Fort Myers Beach. And the video that's been coming in now, Kelly, that the sun is up, just devastating, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. Look at this. Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Tough to make out what happened with the buildings. What you can see what happened. It's tough to make out what kind of building it was, what kind of structure was it. Look at the palm tree snapped, just dangling there. A lot of the structures here have been leveled, destroyed. You can still see the dark clouds off in the distance when this video was taken. The debris everywhere and people trying to walk around. This is one of the reasons you need those hard-soled shoes. And it's tough in Florida. You're used to flip-flops and nice weather, but you know that when you've got something like this, you've certainly got to take care out there. Storm surge as well. We had quite a bit of storm surge that moved through, about 7.26 there from Ian, new record. We continue to watch this as well. Fort Myers is one of the areas that got hit so hard. They got 6 to 8 inches of rain, but as much as 1.5 feet in Port Charlotte as well. Let's get you going with what's going on as well. Look at that. Oh my gosh, that boat, that watercraft just turned. And people just checking it out, right, Kelly? You go back and you're trying to find your business, your home.
Unrecognizable.
Your boat, gone. And this is your livelihood. Some people who've saved up and retired and gone there, or maybe it's just where they live, and it's all gone.
One thing I do want to mention, you can see in this area, it looks like the floodwaters have subsided. By the way, we do have Fox weather reporter Robert Ray going in there later this hour. We'll check in with him. But one thing, we've still been seeing a lot of flooding going on. And one thing that I've been noticing is, if you notice the difference between the residents and the first responders have rain boots on, they have their waterproof pants on. This water, folks, is not the kind of water you want to be walking through. No. It is full of bacteria. It is incredibly dangerous to be doing so. I know it's not always possible when you're going back to your home, looking at the devastation, you're in the middle of a water rescue. But if you did evacuate and you're coming home, I highly suggest you get some rain boots because you do not want to walk through that water.
Yeah, Kelly, you think about even the sewage, a lot of it gets backed up at that point. So you talked about the bacteria, the sewage, the debris that's in there. You just don't know what's in there.
Exactly. Especially if you have a medical issue where you have a hard time healing from infection. Those people are especially susceptible to this. We are, though, going to look now at Atlantic Beach, Florida. In Fox News correspondent Jonathan Seri is there. Jonathan, we were talking to you yesterday. What is the difference between now and then?
Yeah, Kelly and Craig, the conditions are continuing to deteriorate. We had heavy winds yesterday. Now mix that with rains, and the surf is really kicking up. Behind me, you can see that wall of sand that they brought in heavy equipment yesterday trying to shore up the public beach access to prevent water from spilling over. It has been doing a fairly good job holding the water back, but occasionally we'll get a large wave and a portion of it will overwash the top of that berm. It hasn't been enough to cause any flooding to this city, but certainly, there you go, more water coming in. But again, just a small amount, not causing flooding to the city just yet at this point. But obviously, city and county officials are going to be keeping a close eye on the water levels and the heavy surf in these beachside communities as the brunt of the storm approaches this part of Florida, and is certainly, as is expected, to pass by us out in the Atlantic, potentially pushing more water this way. I'm in Duval County, which includes Atlantic Beach, other communities like neighboring Neptune Beach, and also the largest community being the city of Jacksonville. There are no mandatory evacuations here in Duval County. However, the mayor of Jacksonville telling people in flood-prone areas, and that would include beachside communities like the one I'm in right now, and also communities along the St. Johns River, which flooded during Hurricane Irma. The flooding included large sections of downtown Jacksonville. The mayor urging these residents to take precautions, protect themselves against the potential of more flooding with Ian coming through here. This is not a storm to contend with and not a storm to take any chances with, and it's heading this way. Kelly and Craig, back to you.
Jonathan, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to check in with you, Jonathan, real quick. There's a lot of the foam coming up and over that sand berm that you talked about. Has some of the water started to come over that or erode some of that away from the beach just to your right?
Yeah, it looks like some of the sand has been washed away. Now, on both sides of this man-made dune that they made are natural dunes with the sea oats growing on top. Those appear to be holding, and the sea oats are actually protected by law. You have to use boardwalks to go over them. You're not supposed to walk up on the natural sand dunes, and we're seeing why. These provide a natural barrier for some of these communities, offering the best protection against flooding. Of course, if you have a significant storm surge, it'll overwash, but if it's a relatively light storm surge, they offer significant protection. And the natural berms appear to be holding up, but at least some superficial damage to this man-made sandhill that they created yesterday to prevent the water from coming in this public beach access point.
And Jonathan, with the wind howling, storm surge a major concern, what building is behind you? Is that a home or a business on your left behind you?
Yeah, yeah. On my left, this is actually a public safety station. This is where lifeguards, rescue teams use as a headquarters, actually for the city of Neptune Beach. I'm at the southern end of Atlantic Beach, and on the other side of the beach access is where Neptune Beach begins, and both communities have closed their public beaches. They just don't want people getting anywhere near the water, and at times I've seen curious tourists coming out here wanting to take pictures on the beach, wanting to see the surf, and lifeguards have turned them around saying it's just too dangerous. Please go back.
Yeah, too dangerous. And just south of you looks like A1A, right, from Neptune Beach down the coast. So a lot of people try to travel A1A.
I'm sorry, I could only hear part of what you were saying. I think you were mentioning A1A, the major highway going through here. I don't know how much you can see through these palm trees, but we're actually seeing there's still traffic out on the roads, even in these blustery conditions. And so you can still drive. Local officials are urging people against any non-essential travel. But at this point, the roads are still open. They're in some parts of Duval County, the wind has knocked palm fronds down into the trees. In some areas, even knocked down trees. There was some dramatic video that Jacksonville Fire Rescue released this morning where firefighters were out and about clearing roads of some trees that fell down in the roads. They're doing their best job possible to keep the roads open. And in many cases, people are still driving around, taking their chances, even in these blustery winds.
Incredible. Well, Jonathan Seri, thank you so much from Atlantic Beach, Florida. Be safe, my friend. We'll check in with you again shortly. Let's get right to it. Also, this just in, Tampa Airport reopening tomorrow. Just sending that tweet out. We've got that live shot of St. Augustine, Florida, which we've been showing to you. Meantime, we do have, as the storm heads out over into, or starts to head over into the Atlantic and re-intensify over the warmer waters, we do have some hurricane watches and hurricane warnings in place. By the way, the hurricane warning does encompass the entire coast there of South Carolina. We've had, by the way, 11 I-named storms retired since 2000. Orlando, by the way, does break a record for the wettest 2 days on record with more than a foot of rain reported at the airport there. So those hurricane warnings, again, issued right along the coast. You got Tropical Storm Ian there. We've got those hurricane warnings up and down Florida as well. They do extend up into the South Carolina coast from those are tropical.
All right, folks, I am back right here. Let me bring myself back to see something here. I want to just kind of inform you guys on some things right here. First of all, you guys can all hear me, right? Yeah, you guys can all hear me. All right. So what I want to tell you guys is as far as a lot of individuals, you guys that emailed me last night and was talking about the whole, oh, Ty, I know you said this, and you know, which is cool. What I'm talking about, they said, I know you said about the climate change and you don't believe in it, blah, 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 all that good stuff like that. Our systems are showing proof that the hurricanes are strengthening and they're getting worse, and the weather is getting worse. The weather is getting worse, and the storms are intensifying. So I know you may not believe it, but I do. So anyway, I just want to let you guys know real quick about hurricane statistics, like some of the most powerful ones to hit here. So I know for a fact that the one that made us run out of Florida, that bad boy, Hurricane Michael, that's the one I told you about, the one that came like the house that we were living in. We were already 2.5, 3 feet off the ground, and the water still got 3 feet into the house. So 6 feet of water, right? Anyway, what I want to tell you guys is this. For the ones who keep saying these different things, so we have 5 hurricanes that seem to be the most powerful ones to hit the U.S., right? This actually ended up being one of them, Hurricane Ian. So let me take y'all back. In 1935, Labor Day, 1935, 185 miles per hour wind. Okay. Everybody know, I think nothing topped Andrew. Hurricane Andrew with winds of 165 miles per hour. This one right here, Hurricane Ian, 150 miles per hour. In 2004, Hurricane Charlie with 150 miles per hour. And the one that tore us up in Panama City, Panama City Beach, that was Hurricane Michael with 160 miles per hour. So if you look at that time frame, 1935 was the highest one recorded with 185 miles per hour. 1935, right? From 1935, the next one from 1935 ended up being in 1992. So you're talking about a 60-year jump, at least almost a 60-year jump in 1992. After 1992, 2004. So 8, 9, 10, 11. So a 12-year gap. From 2004, the next one to hit was 2018. 14-year gap, right? And then from 2018, 1921, there's a 4-year gap. So to say these storms are getting worse, but then we look at the worst ones with the most highest miles per hour recorded, no, absolutely not. Like I said, because tropical storms happen, we got typhoons that happen, all these different things that happen, guys. A lot of times I tell people, go and do your research. Don't believe me. Look at different things all over the United States. Y'all do know the United States is not the only one. I know, and this was weird too. Cyclones, typhoons, things of the sort like that. We're not the only ones that get hit with hurricanes. I know we call it hurricanes here, but they got all them different names for them all over. So they're trying to say different things. Oh, well, see, a hurricane is different. Well, a typhoon is different. A tornado is different. I know a tornado. Don't get me wrong. A tornado is different from a hurricane. Completely different ball game, right? But a hurricane and a typhoon, or then they want to call it a tornado or a cyclone. A tornado and a cyclone is the same thing. Hurricane, typhoon. Come on now. So anyway, then also, like I said, if you go across the rest of the world, you'll see that there's ones that actually had hurricane force wind that was higher than this one. Some of them reached almost 200 miles per hour, right? So anyway, folks, I'll get back to this again, but I just want to throw that in there because I know, like I said, some Floridians are watching and some people are, well, man, Ty, it does seem like we just did get hit with a hurricane. Yeah, that was in 2018, Hurricane Michael. I get that. But other things have happened. Category 1s, tropical storms, those things have happened. But to say that things seem to be completely intensifying, like every year there's an intensity. No, that's not true. So anyway, folks, like I said, appreciate you guys all being in here. I'll get back and show you guys the screen here. And don't forget, if you haven't done it already, hit that like button so the video can be circulated. I am going to be working on some things off to the side. So my Floridians, I have some things I have to do in regards to my YouTube channel. So I might be off and I might not be broadcasting for a few hours. If it just magically shuts off or it just randomly shuts off, that means I'm doing work behind the scenes to get ready to start doing what I usually do on my YouTube channel. But I will be bringing it back up for you guys as it goes. So anyway, I'll let this play out while I go ahead and do my little research on what I'm getting ready to bring you guys. All right. So be back. Give me a second here.
Out there. It's not always easy to communicate in these times, especially when it might not be easy even before this happened.
Yeah, and so many of these heroes, we heard Sheriff Mina just talking a short time ago about how, he was walking around dispatch and one of the dispatchers was like, I don't even know what's going on at my house, or a deputy who had damage to his house, but he's out working, so we know everybody is doing the best they can. We certainly appreciate
They drop everything to serve the public as well. I want to show you this video as well, showing someone kayaking down a flooded roadway. Boy, you could put this in about any community right now. This was actually in East Orlando at the Ventura Country Club there as well. You can see the water up to the tire there of the SUV near the driveway there. I bet I've seen a dozen of these pictures of streets that were once streets and became somewhat of rivers today. Hopefully some of that is going down with communities that might be drying out. Well, Fox 35's Marie Ettinger, by the way, is out in the Storm Team Thunder truck as we check some of the conditions in other places.
Yeah, she has switched places with Dave Puglisi, who's getting some rest now. And Marie, I understand you're on your way to Orla Vista neighborhood, which sadly, Orla Vista, this is a neighborhood that just got, reamed with water back during Hurricane Irma 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago, almost to the day. I think that anniversary for that 5 years just passed last week, and that community is getting hit pretty hard. I do want to show you what we're looking at right now on the roads, because last I was out here was around 2 a.m. last night, and it was looking much worse then. So it seems the rain, at least for the time being, has lightened up quite a bit. You can still see some debris along the sides of the roads. Fortunately, we have not yet crossed anything major in the middle of the road that could cause a big problem. Like we said, though, we are on the way to Orla Vista, and we have video of that rescue that the sheriff's office has been performing throughout this morning. That was because of the intense rainfall we had seen throughout all day yesterday, throughout the night, and that continues into this morning. This happened after all of the county's efforts to avoid it. They had been pumping water out of the area just to try to increase their rainfall capacity. That came after millions of dollars in investments into canals and ditches and things that would avoid something like this. But that was before Hurricane Irma. It didn't work then. They got about 10 or 11 inches of rainfall in a single day during Hurricane Irma, and that led to similar flooding. Today, we're seeing it again. And the county supervisor there did actually warn people to evacuate, saying something like this could happen, and unfortunately it has. We are going to try to talk with people who chose to stay and who are now clearly struggling, having to evacuate. We'll try to talk with county officials to hear about that cleanup plan, how they're going to get that water out. We do know they have about 70 pumps in total available for, I believe, 20 large ones to get water out of homes or get water out of areas that need it quick, and 50 smaller ones that they are able to provide to try to clear out that water. And again, they did invest in larger pumps for the area. And they
all right, you have been watching the local Fox 35 coverage of Ian there. Thankfully, the weather seems to be getting less and less intense. Therefore, evacuations are getting a lot easier. Hopefully, we can get the power companies out here soon. I do want to talk about storm surge, though, because that is really the big story as we go moving forward. That's actually been the story the whole time. It's never just the wind. It's always about the storm surge. So we are going to talk about storm surge warnings and watchings. You can see those waves, St. Augustine. Remember, storm surge is the abnormal rise of water that's due to the wind of a tropical system physically pushing it on land. Coastal flooding. You can see that right now in St. Augustine. That pier is absolutely getting battered there. You have those major waves going on. Surfers, I know you're going to be tempted to go out, but please don't do it. The rescue workers are already at their highest for what they can handle, and they don't need to go out and save you too. But let's talk about all those tropical storm Ian watches from storm surge and warnings. We have storm surge warnings in effect from the Palm Coast of Florida up to Jacksonville, all the way up into the coastal areas of Georgia, and then also from the coast of South Carolina up into Charleston. Storm surge warnings. Yes, Ian has significantly degraded wind-wise, but it's never just about the wind. We never only talk about the category of a hurricane. That only takes into account the wind. It doesn't talk about the storm surge. It doesn't talk about the flash flooding, which we obviously saw happen in areas like Orlando. It also doesn't even talk about the tornado risk as well. So the focus going forward is the fact that we're not in the clear yet, although the area that's not in the clear is going to be shifting farther to the north. So we do have to watch out for that storm surge. I will say the one benefit to the one silver lining in South Carolina and Georgia, a lot of these homes on the coast, they're rised up. They have risers. So they can deal with about 6 feet of storm surge, which in Georgia, you're going to be seeing 4 to 6 feet of storm surge. In South Carolina, you can see storm surge as high as 7 feet. That being said, I do know a lot of people use that first floor a lot of the time as a garage. Highly suggest if you're using it for storage, you get those things out of there and get it to the second floor of your home, which in that area near the coast, a lot of time is technically the first floor of your home. So let's talk about buoy wind gusts. Current gust is around 38 miles per hour. This is just off to the east of Daytona Beach. This is about 30 miles away from where I live, by the way. I work at the Fox Bureau in Orlando, but look at these wind gusts, right around 50 miles per hour. Now, Florida is used to very strong wind gusts, right? We get severe thunderstorms almost every day in the summertime. Those are wind gusts up to 65 miles per hour, a lot of times higher than that. That happens for just like that, just for a few minutes at a time. But these wind gusts you can see are happening for hours and hours on end. And that's why we're seeing so much devastating damage. It's not just a quick second of a wind gust like you get with a thunderstorm. It's basically like a severe thunderstorm that goes on for hours. So you can see there's the buoy camera. You can see those rough seas. And Craig, you're going to have more.
All right. Yeah, we do want to send it over to hurricane specialist Brian Norcross, who's been tracking this with us with the latest information. Brian, what are you seeing right now?
Well, we're seeing this slow-moving giant circulation that's finally slowly releasing its grip on Florida. Take a look at the satellite picture. We still see we have onshore winds in the circulation here coming in on the west coast, which just has the effect of slowing the ability of the water to drain. Now it's draining. It's down dramatically from what it was last night, but it's just slower because the storm has such a giant circulation, and it's that giant circulation, of course, that has caused so many problems, including all this storm surge. The bigger the circulation, the more storm surge by a dramatic amount. So when you see a big storm, that's actually in many ways worse than a smaller, stronger storm in the aggregate. The smaller, stronger storm is more like a big tornado, like Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Charlie in 2004. But in a bigger storm, you involve so many more people, and that's what we have going here, where we have from one end of the state to the other significant dramatic effects. The other thing I want you to see on this big satellite picture is you have this kind of a comma shape developing now in the system, and the comma shape is an indication that some cold air is getting involved and it's becoming more a northern storm. That's kind of a technical thing. People that get hit by it, I mean, what do they care, right? If you get the winds, you get the winds. If you get the rain, you get the rain or the storm surge. And this will still cause all that, but you might hear reference to that. That's why I make note of it. Now, finally, for Central Florida, it's ending. There's still light rain you see in this tail here coming around through the Orlando area down toward Sebastian, maybe Vero Beach. So it's ending. At least it's green. It's not the yellows. The yellow area, which was this relentless feeder band that was onshore for so much of the overnight and today, and you saw all the flooding and that they've been reporting there in Orlando, that was caused by that. Now, to the north, it hasn't completely ended. This is up around St. Augustine, and you saw the reports from St. Augustine, strong onshore winds. Now, those strong onshore winds there are caused by two things. We have, of course, the hurricane or the tropical storm now, but we also have a cold front that's been there, and there's strong high pressure to the north. So the air is being squeezed between those two, and that's what's aggravating the wind situation the farther north you go, up toward Jacksonville and up toward the Georgia coast. So here's the rain totals. You can see for that band how relentless that band was over to Orlando and then south to the northern part of Osceola County and then back offshore in the northern part of Brevard County. That's like Titusville and so forth. There's New Smyrna Beach up in here, south of Daytona Beach. So this has been under this fire hose of rain. Not that there hasn't been tremendous rain up here to the north. I mean, this is still 5 to 8 inches of rain. It's still a lot of rain. But down here, we have rain amounts in the 12 to 18 inch range broadly and the 18 to 24 inch range in those purple spots. So it's been stunningly spectacular, the rain in a bad kind of way. And then further south, the folks north of Fort Myers, they didn't get the wind so badly as they did in Fort Myers and south to Naples, but they got the rain. And last night, it all came at once. And more than a foot of rain came in just a few hours there. And down there, especially when you get in these inland sections in here, it's more hilly there, and it takes time for the water to get down to the streams or whatever, and then flow out. So that flooding is not going to alleviate anytime right away. So here's the new cone. The center of the storm is offshore. I guess, did we not get a noon update from the Hurricane Center? I guess we did not, at least didn't arrive in the computer. If either of you guys in the studio got a noon update, then be sure and let me know. All right, in any case, I'll tell you what, now that I see where I am on the screen, let me do it this way. Yeah, so here's the storm down here. Here we have the hurricane force wind forecast. And the idea is that since the storm took this shortcut across Florida, it's been leaning to the right side of the cone over and over and over again. That was a shorter path against Florida, across Florida. And so that has allowed it to have a little better structure than was forecast and maintain a little more wind than was forecast. So now the Hurricane Center is thinking, okay, let's go ahead and forecast it to increase a little bit over the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, even though the upper level winds are not at all conducive to the storm intensifying very much. So we're not worried about this blowing up into some sort of a super strong hurricane or something, but it may reach hurricane strength before it gets to the South Carolina coast. That's why hurricane warnings are in effect there. Here you see in the purple, those are hurricane warnings. The idea, winds sustained right at the coast at hurricane strength possibly, but certainly hurricane force gusts, which of course will take down trees, can do some damage to weaker structures and so forth. That's on the South Carolina coast. Outside of that, both inland and north and south, tropical storm warnings, and this is a tropical storm watch. But just imagine in all that red area and that little yellow area, the alert for winds over 40 miles an hour. Again, they can take down branches, take out power, and cause lots of problems. And this is coming with significant rainfall, of course. Here's the rainfall forecast, kind of a total rainfall forecast. So still rain still to come. So you see right here, this is offshore of Florida. You see this little bit of Florida here still in the rain. This is what we showed you just a moment ago on the radar. And so now as the storm moves offshore, the heavy rain moves north. And you can see, if you look where the kind of darker orange is up there, that's more or less the track of the center of the storm. So the idea is the center of the storm goes up in there somewhere, or the worst case, or the core of the storm, I shouldn't say the center, the core of the storm does something like that, and that's where more rain is forecast to fall. So they've put up this flash flood threat graphic that we've been showing coming out of the Weather Prediction Center, and here you see what's left of that band where the core of it is there from Jacksonville down to Volusia County, which is the Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach area, and then a lesser and lesser threat as you go inland. But then as we go north, look at this, all the way well inland into the upstate of South Carolina, forecasting a likely threat of flash flooding, not to the extreme as it was in Florida for a while, but still, this is fairly hilly country. The hillier the country, the less rain it takes to get flash floods because the water drains down to lower elevations, gullies, roads, rivers, and so forth. So this is no doubt going to be a dangerous situation there in South Carolina. And there's still also a threat. It's even likely in a much larger area, North Carolina down into North Georgia. So this is sort of phase 4. So let's think of phase 3 of this thing. Phase 2 is the flooding in North Florida. Phase 3 is what's going to happen here near the coast with the storm surge, flooding, and potential tornadoes and so forth. And then phase 4 is as that moisture gets up here in the mountains, the upstate of South Carolina and the mountains of North Carolina, and the possibility for flash flooding there, even though the winds from the storm will be decreasing dramatically by that time. All right, guys, that's it. Back to you.
All right, Brian Norcross, thanks so much. Always great to hear from you and get your insight on what's going on. Meantime, we are also standing by as President Biden is waiting some updates at the FEMA headquarters there in Washington, D.C. We are monitoring to see when he does come up. We will bring it to you live right here on Fox Weather. Meantime, we continue tracking Ian, as Brian Norcross was just talking about, could intensify, could become a minimal hurricane category 1, but still a big concern as it heads out over the Atlantic and could head close to South Carolina. The latest coming up right after this, right here on Fox Weather.
I knew you should have called a pro.
I got this. Are you a contractor? No, but I watch a lot of home improvement shows on Sling TV. I'm gonna need a forklift, a laser thingy, 5 tons of concrete, and a stud finder. Don't worry about a permit. The mayor owes me a favor.
With Sling, choose your channel lineup of live sports, news, and entertainment. Be confident it's the TV you love for a price you'll love.
We're gonna need lots of duct tape, the sticky kind.
Maybe too confident. Sling. Try us today. Tracking Ian. As the major hurricane rips through the Gulf, Hurricane HQ has you covered with live reports as events unfold. Tracking Ian's path through Florida and the rest of the Southeast. For the latest news and up-to-the-minute reports, stay with Fox Weather.
Did I ever think that I was going to be accused of something that I'm not? Who ever thinks that's going to happen in their life?
America spends Sunday nights with Trey Gowdy. He's talking the biggest issues facing the nation.
It's one thing to see the problem. It's even better if you see a solution.
And defending your freedom with the facts. Don't miss Sunday Night America with Trey Gowdy at 7, only on Fox News Channel. When hope is hard to find, a new collection of real-life stories from Fox News' Harris Faulkner reveals how salvation came when it was needed most. Faith still moves mountains. Miraculous stories of the healing power of prayer. Go to foxnewsbooks.com to pre-order now.
It's really striking the amount of control that China already has in Brazil.
We're going to wake up one day and we're going to
on Ian right at FEMA headquarters there. As he does so, we'll bring it to you. We'll listen in. We're waiting for that. We're standing by here at Fox Weather, Kelly. But as soon as that happens, we will certainly bring that right to you.
That's right. We do have some new video just into Fox Weather. The Orange County Sheriff's Office is making their way through flooded streets, looking for people marooned by Hurricane Ian's devastating flooding. You can see that there. Look at the windshield wipers going. One thing I want to point out that I mentioned before, you see this water. Do you see how brown and murky it is? All of these emergency responders have been going through the water with waders or rain boots. They're not putting their skin up against that water. I know it's not always possible during a rescue or anything like that, but if you're coming back to your home to survey the damage with your home, I highly suggest you put on some sort of rain boot, some sort of waterproof covering. You do not want your skin in that water. I promise you it is filled with bacteria. And a lot of the time with tropical systems, we see some people die from bacterial infections, especially if you happen to have maybe a medical issue that makes it harder for you to heal from bacterial infections. Craig.
It's incredible. Great advice as we see a lot of these rescues going on. And we thank all the first responders and all of the community who's coming together as well. I also want to bring you this video. This is from Fort Myers Beach, Florida. A lot of the area here, this town, this shopping area, this downtown area, destroyed. A lot of the structures leveled. You can see some of the palm trees off in the back. There was one specifically that's leaning over. The winds that came through here, the storm surge, just impressive. Just heartbreaking when you look at these images and you know that somebody's livelihood, somebody's business was there. These are jobs that people don't have when they are coming back to their homes. They no longer have a place to go work. They no longer have a business to run. It's going to take some time to rebuild all of these locations. And that's why you think about all of the lives that are impacted in this specific area alone. Just one area, blocks of Fort Myers Beach, Florida there, destroyed. It's going to take some time to clean it up. It's going to take some time to get everybody back up and going. Even portion of the pier there was taken out. Some of the vessels, look at that one, underneath portion of a bridge and a couple of them up against each other. The woman and hers, I'm sure just trying to survey the damage. And sometimes you look at this and you think, what just happened? And it's just sad to see. Here's another one of the shopping area where a lot of the structures are gone. Again, a lot of this has to be cleaned up. Walking over this area, even though the water has receded, you'll need those hard-soled shoes trying to walk over this. You've got nails, you've got pieces of wood that are thrown around, could easily pierce right through the shoe. If you're going to be in this area helping out with the rescue and just helping clean up. A lot of the people in and around the area coming back to their homes and trying to find out, what do we do next? Getting some resources. Also earlier, we did speak with Ashley Moody, the Attorney General for Florida, saying watch for price gouging in some cases. They've had a couple of reports. If you do expect that maybe you're getting overcharged for gas, hotels, look at that part of the pier gone. They have an app called No Scam. You can also call the number 1-866-9-NO-SCAM. Also, it's tough to hear these stories. There's a $1,000 fine if you violate that. So that's another reminder. We want to help each other out and don't want to see people taking advantage of this, Kelly.
Right. We are all in this together. Yeah. Let's go to Tallahassee where we can find Fox Weather's Mitty Hicks. Mitty, can you please tell us what you're seeing? How does it compare to yesterday?
Well, here in Tallahassee, Kelly, we pretty much missed all of what we are seeing just to the south of us. But the reason why we are in Tallahassee, Kelly, is because this has been the state staging center for all of those critical resources that will be heading down to the south. So we're talking FEMA, we're talking the American Red Cross, the U.S. Coast Guard, as well as the National Guard. So what I can tell you is that these teams have officially deployed out. We know that the governor is out surveying the damage across the state. He's been briefing reporters all morning long. And what we know at this time is that there are at least 26 states that have sent in resources, including EMT, fire, and rescue. And the governor's team says right now they've started rescue in the barrier reef area. So that's what we know at this point right now. Around us, we still see the National Guard. We see some of the American Red Cross trucks as well. So again, that's what is going on here in Tallahassee, is these teams are just really deploying to get that critical help out to those who need it. Kelly?
Is there anything people around there can do to maybe help emergency responders do their job better, like stay out of the way?
Well, here in Tallahassee, we had a chance to talk to the visitor center. This is the place where a lot of people from the south have evacuated to. So what they're saying is really just to stay off those roads. That's the best thing people can do to help, and just wait before they go into their homes. They're also telling people, look, if you have someone who needs help, lend a helping hand, be it fuel or, if gas or anything, or food, for example. That's really the message here in Tallahassee. Remember, we're still about 200 miles north of where a lot of these cities took the brunt of Hurricane Ian. So this is more of a place where people are evacuating to and really just waiting to get back home to assess the damage of their homes.
Mitty, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, here's a live look at St. Augustine. You can still see how incredibly flooded it is. Now, do keep in mind, we see a lot of this in some cities. St. Augustine, you saw it in Orlando too, and you may be wondering why this seems to pinpoint some major city areas. Well, a lot of the time, it's because the landscape is different. You have a whole lot of concrete in these areas. Obviously, you can imagine that in downtown Orlando.
All right, I am back, ladies and gents. Let me let you guys know something here. Again, I appreciate you guys all tuning in and watching and all that great stuff. What I'm getting ready to do here, I'm getting ready to take a break from this a little bit, and I'm gonna get into some stuff that I'm gonna do today. So again, appreciate you guys all being here. Appreciate you guys all tuning in. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up so it can be circulated within the YouTube algorithm and within the YouTube recommendations, etc., etc. Now, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because shortly here, I'm getting ready to go into my spiel on some stuff that I came across that some people sent to me, and I will be presenting that to you. I'm getting ready to talk about Lizzo playing a historical flute, and I just wait, stick around. Anyway, keep this tab up, okay? Go to my channel, keep my tab up, get ready to refresh, because I'm getting ready to go live and talk about this as well, okay? So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, okay? I will be right back. Stay tuned. Let everybody that you know, that if there's anybody that you guys got social media that you're friends with, let them know that I am getting ready to go live on this particular ordeal, and to go ahead and tune in if they can. All right. I will be right back. I am Ty Smith, model Renaissance man, hoping and praying that every last one of you, everybody in Florida too, definitely have food, shelter, and clothing. I know they all like, this sounds crazy, but just because stuff got wrecked don't mean that these people are not going to be able to find food, shelter, and clothing. So I am hoping that everybody does have food, shelter, and clothing. And most of all, hope and pray that everybody is getting great health, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. God bless you all through Jesus.